Tracy V. Wilson. And together we host a podcast called Stuff You Missed in History Class, which, as you may suspect by the name, covers some topics that you might not have learned about in school. Maybe you didn't personally miss it, maybe it just wasn't covered. So we talk about lots of women, lots of people of color, lots of people who fit under the LGBTQIA umbrella. We publish episodes every Monday and Wednesday with a mini-sode on Friday and a classic every Saturday. And you can find us on the iHeartRadio app, at Apple Podcasts, or wherever it is you listen.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go, live in Los Angeles, a radio studio today. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we are on Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and today FS1, due to extreme caution and a couple of COVID cases on my Sunday Fox NFL show, I am going to be for the next few days in the radio studio. 1 hour from now, Colin right, Colin wrong. Great guest today, including Howie Long this hour, and Joy Taylor is on the FS1 lot and joining us live. Joy, how are you?
I'm great, Colin. Sad to not be with you today, but we're figuring it all out. And what a crazy weekend.
It was. And I want to start the show, Joy. If you're in your 20s or early 30s, this is hard to picture, but I'll try to paint the picture. If you're in your 20s, you don't remember this probably, but I'll give you an example. College basketball 20 years ago was huge. Guys like Patrick Ewing played 4 years of college. It felt as big as the NBA, I'm not joking. Can you imagine Zion for 4 years at Duke? All the best players came back. Occasionally leaving early meant you left after your junior year. College basketball was huge 20, 25 years ago. So was boxing. You didn't have every baseball game and every NBA game and every college football game on television. You had much less on television 25 years ago. And the boxing matches felt so huge, and there were 4 or 5 massive, Ollie, Tyson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Hagler, Hearns fights. And 20 years ago, the Raiders games, they all felt huge. They were rivals with the Steelers. They were rivals with Don Shula, the Dolphins. They were rivals with Elway. They were rivals with the new Seahawks. Everybody was their rival. And they'd play those late afternoon games, and they just felt gigantic. And then they just didn't matter a lot for the last 20 years. The Raiders are officially back. Last night, that was the single best loss, not only for the Raiders, but any NFL team this year. That thing had a chance to be awful. Andy Reid's 18-3 off a bye. The Raiders had beaten them at Arrowhead, and then victory lapped it in their bus. Typical Raiders get cocky and believe their press, and then they show up and get boat raced. No! They outplayed the Chiefs for most of the game. Can't tell you the last time I led a show with a losing football team. But if you're a Raider fan, you should feel great. Derek Carr was humming. That's as good as Derek Carr has ever played. They can run the football. They can go deep. They can eat the clock. It was just, first of all, between Mahomes and Derek Carr, that was the best quarterback matchup. That was a unbelievable showcase of quarterback talent. And the better quarterback won in the final, drive. That's what Patrick Mahomes does. You got to feel great. Kansas City this year, their defense since the end of last year has been better. So against everybody else this year, Kansas City's allowing 17.5 points a game. Against the Raiders this year, they're surrendering 35.5 points. So I watched that game, and I watched Derek Carr, and the reason everybody in America bet the Kansas City Chiefs, the Vegas sports books made a fortune yesterday, because all of us had Kansas City. It had Chiefs written all over it. Revenge, Andy Reid off a bye, the Raiders had beaten them, they'd victory lapped it, they're starting to get great press, and that had Raider mess all over it. And they played great football, and I gotta tell you, I said it last week, John Gruden's my coach of the year. I'll double down on it. I know they're only 6-4, but if the playoffs started today, this is what's interesting. The Steelers in the AFC would be the number 1 seed. They'd get a bye. Kansas City would be the number 2 seed. You know who they'd play? The Raiders. And I got news for you. Andy Reid has no interest playing them again. He'd take Cleveland. He'd take Baltimore getting back into the playoffs. He'd take the sleepy Colts. He would take Buffalo. He'd probably even take Tennessee. So the Raiders are officially back. Derek Carr and John Gruden are in complete and utter harmony. Incredibly impressive. And I just think, I wish college basketball was like the old days and guys stayed in college and it was bigger. And I wish boxing was as big as it used to be. And I miss those 4 o'clock West Coast games, the sun coming down in Oakland, and here come the Raiders against the Dolphins and the Steelers, and they were just magnificent. They felt like the NFL. They were the outlaws of the NFL. And maybe in Vegas now they still are. But here's Gruden and Derek Carr afterwards. Happy guys for a loss.
I couldn't be more proud of our football team. I wouldn't trade any of our players for anybody. The effort that they've given us is tremendous. We've got to eliminate the penalties, and that starts with me.
This is the best offense I've ever been a part of. You know, this group is awesome, and I know I say it every week, but we can win in different ways. You know, we can smash them, with the run game, or we can do a shootout. We can do it that way.
This felt so much like the Rams-Chiefs. Remember that game that was scheduled for Mexico a couple years ago? They had to come back, play in Los Angeles. The Chiefs lost that game. And it kind of feels like now, a couple years later, the Chiefs can win that game. And it's the Raiders that feel a little bit like the Chiefs. They're not quite ready to win that game yet, but they're really close, and they're about as good as a 6-4 team gets. And Derek Carr, and a lot of you don't like him, he was magnificent. He was absolutely great. And yeah, I know. We know Mahomes is great. That's been established. He's got the Super Bowl. I'll tell you, the NFL has hit a trifecta with Mahomes. He's the 3 things that matter. He's great, he's heroic, and he's incredibly likable. But what a performance last night. So let's talk about a team I've been critical of, and I still think they're going to go probably 13-3, the Green Bay Packers. But I said on Friday's show, they are the convertible sports car of the NFL. Nobody looks cooler. Nobody's better in better weather. They just scream country club living. But they've never been in a fight and won a fight in their life. So I want to see Green Bay play the Colts in what will be an ugly football game. The Colts are physical. The Colts offensive line is great. They challenge your manhood. And what happened? The Packers looked really good for a half. And then the second half became into a little bit of a fist fight, and Green Bay rolled over. This is why I can't take them seriously. They're going to win out in their schedule. They play a bunch of bad teams. But if you start looking at the numbers in the second half, classic Green Bay, could they run the ball? Nope, 66 yards rushing. Turnovers? Ooh, they got a little uncomfortable. Colts have a pass rush, 4. Time of possession, they got smoked. And it's not Aaron Rodgers' fault. Aaron Rodgers watched the second half. But they went in at halftime. Green Bay led. Everything's rolling. Colts came out, had a 14-play drive, a 10-play drive, and an 8-play drive. Thanks for flying United. And Aaron Rodgers sat in the sidelines and watched the second half. Wasn't on Aaron. I mean, he had a pick. It wasn't Aaron's best game, but Aaron played fine. Aaron played very, very well. But this is what I doubt about him. This is what I doubt. And Green Bay tried to solve this dilemma in their draft. They went and got a running back, a power back, and a blocking tight end, and 3 offensive linemen. They haven't solved it. They remain the convertible sports car of the NFL, and SUVs win in this league once you get to Thanksgiving. And by the way, the Colts got no breaks from the officials. Well, I mean, that series of holding calls, a couple of those, come on, late in the game, you don't call those holding calls. You really don't call those. So I listen, they're 7-3 right now. Green Bay, I looked at their schedule this morning. They're probably gonna go 13-3, and everybody's gonna fall back in love with them. But when I look at the Packers, I take the games out where they face bad quarterbacks, because you're not going to face any of those in the playoffs. You're going to face Russell Wilson or a Jared Goff or a Tom Brady. You're not going to face any bad quarterbacks, so I don't care about those games. I'm going to cherry pick the games you play, teams with competent quarterbacks that are physical, because those are the teams that end up in the playoffs, especially in the second round on. Matt LaFleur, after the game, his thoughts on getting completely pushed around in the second half against the Colts.
It was the tale of two halves. I thought the first half there was a lot of great complimentary football. The second half was the exact opposite, and we got beat in every phase. Obviously, the kickoff return where we fumbled the football was a big point in the game as well, and you just can't do that stuff against a good team.
And you can't sit on the sidelines if you're Aaron Rodgers and watch a 14-play drive and a 10-play drive and an 8-play drive result in 13 points. That, to me, I kept watching early second half, and I'm like, how is Aaron Rodgers going to be in rhythm? He had a couple of 3-and-outs. Of course he did. You sit in the sidelines for a 14 and a 10-play drive. You can't ask an offense to walk in against that Colts defense and just, come on, first down. It's too hard for Aaron. I'll defend Aaron here. If you can't get that 24 plays in 2 drives, you're not going to have any harmony in your offensive football if you're asking a quarterback to watch in real time, sit there for 15 minutes. It's just not going to happen. All right, coming up next, it's not like Sean Payton, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, needs to be defended. But starting Taysom Hill reportedly didn't make some of the Saints players happy. But Sean was right, and he knows something about Taysom Hill that Jameis Winston can't provide. That and Howie Long around the corner on a Monday.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Hey, Caitlin Durante. Yeah, Jamie Loftus? Don't you wish there were a podcast that examined some of everyone's favorite movies using an intersectional feminist lens?
Why, yes, I do.
Well, good news. It exists, and it's our podcast.
What? How did I not know?
I know.
The Bechdel Cast is a weekly show where we invite our favorite comics, writers, and film critics to bring one of their favorite movies and tear it to shreds with us, using the Bechdel test as a jumping-off point for discussion.
Oh, like how Indiana Jones and Consent is, not great?
Or how Tangerine is one of the greatest romps of all time.
Or how the Cheetah Girls are feminist icons with a streak of trouble in capitalism.
Recent episodes cover Space Jam, Harriet the Spy, Set It Off, The Witch, and Little Miss Sunshine.
With amazing guests like Sashir Zameda, Jenna Ushkowitz, Lindsay Ellis, and more.
New episodes of the Bechdelcast come out every Thursday. Listen on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, this whole ad passed the Bechdel test.
Well, except for Indiana Jones.
Wow, he ruins everything.
Geico.com, check it out. Gonna be doing a lot of driving. Geico makes it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. Go to geico.com today. Howie Long around the corner. Next hour, Colin right, Colin wrong. Joy Taylor's in today back at the studio. I'm in the radio studio this week. Then we hopefully return. So last week, Drew Brees gets hurt. And then Jameis Winston we think is going to start, and then Taysom Hill starts. Now, Taysom Hill had only completed 18 passes. And there was a story this weekend that some of the Saints players didn't really like it. Yeah, and some of the Dolphins players didn't really like it when Ryan Fitzpatrick sat. But Tua playing and Taysom Hill playing is very similar, and I'll get to that in a second. So I've always said this about running quarterbacks. Running quarterbacks work. They just don't last. But the element of surprise works. The Wildcat offense worked in this league. For a year, hiking the ball to a running back worked. Even New England tried it in Belichick. It worked. It didn't last. Lamar Jackson worked, Colin Kaepernick worked, Tim Tebow won 7 straight games. It doesn't last. The league figures it out. If you look at the teams that won yesterday, their running backs ran and their quarterbacks threw. That's what eventually works. But Taysom Hill was effective for a game. Because Sean Payton here isn't making a decision for the future of the Saints. He's making a decision for 3 weeks. Sean Payton wants to win 3 games, and then Drew Brees is back. That's it. And for 3 games, his argument is Taysom Hill, element of surprise, is a more athletic version of Tebow. He's a much better thrower of the football than Tebow. And we've seen Lamar and Kaepernick and Tebow. It catches people off guard. It takes months, sometimes a year, for people to figure it out. And Atlanta's defense was hot and looked lost. Atlanta didn't quite know what to do yesterday. And the other thing is, when Brian Flores started Tua over Ryan Fitzpatrick, think about that. Why? Well, because Fitzpatrick was winning, he's been in the league longer, and yet they went with Tua. Why? Because Flores said, my defense is really good, and I don't need a ton from my quarterback. What I need is no mistakes, and Fitzpatrick's a gunslinger. And a lot of the players in Miami didn't like it, but Tua came in, and he was initially a better fit for the defense. Okay, and similarly, Taysom Hill. Saints have a really good defense, but Taysom Hill runs, eats the clock, takes some wear and tear off Alvin Kamara, and doesn't have a history of lots of mistakes like Jameis. And so the Dolphins made a decision to go with a kid that had never played in the NFL over Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was hot, to help their defense. And Taysom Hill helps your defense. He's not going to turn it over. He's going to run and eat the clock. He takes some wear and tear off Alvin Kamara. And so, long term, there's a reason duct tape in life works. Duct tape buys you time until you get a solution for something, or you can buy something, or something gets fixed. Taysom Hill could very well just be the world's best duct tape. All you want to do is win 3 games. And Sean Payton, for the record, is now 6-0 using mid-season backups. He knows what he's doing. Here's Sean Payton after the win.
The offense changed some. We carried a lot of the same protections. Certainly we featured some heavy play actions. We felt like it was going to be a lot of down safety defense. I thought we threw the ball down the field well, and I was proud of the execution. Again, I thought we blocked them up front real well.
Yeah, I mean, as I watched that game, and don't even ask me why I've ever bet Atlanta in my life. I'm now 0 for 400 betting the Falcons. But Atlanta came in playing pretty good defense, and Taysom Hill gave them problems. And never forget this. I go back to this. Tim Tebow won 7 games in a row and couldn't throw the ball. Not close to Taysom Hill. And Taysom's a much better athlete. Is that the element of surprise? The run and shoot worked for a while in the NFL. The Wildcat worked. Atlanta looked lost. And this is duct tape. I mean, Sean Payton just wants to win 3 games. That's all he wants. He wants to win 3 games. Jameis, to me, is the better long-term answer. We're not talking long-term. We're talking 3 weeks, maybe less than a month, and it worked. Here is Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Colin, I thought about warning you about Atlanta this week, but you never consult with me for your Blazing 5, so I couldn't help you.
And you know what? And it's funny because now people attack me. They're like, "You're stupid for doing that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I am. I don't have any retort. I know better. I quit on the Jets by week 2. I quit in Atlanta week 4, and I forgot all about it. Now I will say this. I have the Buccaneers over the Rams tonight, and I'm 6-1 on Ram games. So there's a team I'm great at, and a team I should avoid. Atlanta, it's my bad.
No, you are great with the Rams. So really bad news yesterday for the whole league. Joe Burrow's incredible rookie season is over. He was carted off the field in the 3rd quarter after suffering a brutal leg injury. He reportedly tore his left ACL and will miss the rest of the season. He tweeted after the game, "Thanks for all the love. Can't get rid of me that easy. See you next year." He was sacked 32 times and hit 77 times this season. Both are 3rd most in the league behind Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson. The Bengals did make several offensive line moves this offseason, but obviously it wasn't enough. I mean, those numbers speak for themselves. They have the 26th highest grade in pass blocking and 12th in run blocking this season, according to Pro Football Focus. I mean, this is devastating. This is what we were talking about before the season started, what we were afraid of with Joe Burrow having an Andrew Luck type of situation and getting hit as many times as he was. I mean, he was running around constantly and getting hit constantly. No one can deal with that. And to keep in mind as well, you know, he is still, while he is a big man and he is a bit older than some rookie quarterbacks coming into the league, this is his first NFL season getting hit by NFL players. That's a big difference from college, and at that rate, this is almost felt, I don't want to say inevitable, but it's like this is what we were afraid of all season long.
Yeah, and it's very Andrew Luck, where the team basically it had a bad offensive line and no running game, and so, you know, they're throwing 37, 38, 39 times a game. The Bengals not only have to build an offensive line, but they really have to draft some running backs. Because I think Kansas City is kind of showing you the way. When you get that great quarterback, don't ask him to throw 37 times. Ask him to throw 28 to 35, be special 6 or 7 times. This feels so Andrew Luck to me that it was not just that Andrew Luck had a bad offensive line, but they had no running game. So he put himself up there at 42, 43 times a game throwing, and it's just simply too much.
Yeah, well, we're all obviously wishing him a quick and speedy recovery. He had a great season and was completely impressive. Obviously, the quarterback of the future there, but they've got to put some pieces around him. So Tua struggled against the Broncos Sunday, completing only 11 of 20 passes for 83 yards and a touchdown. Brian Flores decided to bench him in the fourth quarter when Miami was down by 10. It was a little confusion there because he did get hit on the play before they took him out, so it was like, is he hurt or are they benching him? But he did clarify that he was benched for play. The Dolphins could not pull off the comeback with Ryan Fitzpatrick, though they lost to Denver 2013. He threw an interception to Justin Simmons, which essentially sealed the game. Flores said after the game he was taken out because of his performance, but he will be the starter going forward. They are at the New York Jets next week, so that's a good game for him to get a bounce back in. He was also sacked 6 times. He'd only been sacked 4 times in his first 3 starts combined. So.
Yes. Well, you know, Joy, it wasn't like even John Elway and Peyton Manning had like obstacles. He wasn't going to get a defensive touchdown and a special teams touchdown every week. There was going to be a game where it was cold, he was on the road, fell behind and got hit a bunch. And so I had no problem with what Flores was saying. Like, listen, in the moment, we want to win this football game, but I don't listen, this is called the journey. Right? Burrow got hurt, part of the journey. Justin Herbert had big games and lost all of them, part of the journey. This was the first time Tua fell behind, big pass rush, didn't have any answers, high altitude, first game in cold weather perhaps ever. It happens. Now Flores benching him didn't bother me at all.
No, I had no issue with it at all, especially because the Dolphins are in contention. If they weren't in contention for the division and a playoff spot, then I would say, you know what,
Right.
leave him out there. You know, he's got to push through these moments. But they absolutely can make it to the playoffs this year, and with Tua as their quarterback. So this is a moment where, you know, he's been sacked 6 times. It can only get worse from here at this point. Of course, put Fitzpatrick in there and try and at least win the game, and then we'll deal with it later. But I had no issue with that. Plus, also, I think Tua has the mental fortitude and attitude to be able to recover emotionally from being
Yes.
taken out of the game.
Yeah, he does.
Certain guys, you have to, you know, be careful with their personality, how they're going to react to that. I don't think Tua is one of those guys.
He's not a fragile sort. That's not who he is.
No. So the Ravens did a good job containing Derrick Henry through the first 3 quarters yesterday, holding him to only 44 yards, but he still came up big when it mattered. He finished with 33 rushing yards and scored the game-winning touchdown in overtime to give the Titans the 30-24 victory. He got 28 carries in the win, which were the most he's had in a game since week 1. We were just talking about this last week, Colin, that when he doesn't get a high amount of carries, they lose. Like, how he goes is the way that the Titans are going to go. It was also his 6th 100-yard rushing game this season and put him over 1,000 yards for the 3rd consecutive year.
It's funny, I'm watching that game and I'm thinking, the teams that passed on him because he went in the 2nd round, like, what was it that they saw they didn't like? You're like, okay, he's big as a refrigerator, but runs like a running back, and he's very productive, and he doesn't fumble, and he was great in high school, college, and pro football. I mean, there's just not much. Maybe he's not a great pass receiver, but every time I watch him, you know, you fall into the Isn't everybody in the league looking for a Derrick Henry, a 250-pound running back that can pull away from secondary players? Like, that's what everybody in the league. Pete Carroll would die for that this morning, but everybody passed on him at least once, and good for the Titans. They deserve it.
They do, and you know what? Sometimes you outthink the room. Maybe they felt like he had too many carries in college or something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, he's tremendous, and he's impossible to get down in the open field. The best that you can do is push him to the outside and get him out. The AFC South now has gotten more interesting. The Colts are 7-3, Titans 7-3. Obviously, they pulled away from the Texans and Jags, but the AFC playoff picture is very interesting. Titans, Browns, and Raiders in the wild card right now, and the Ravens are now in the hunt with the Dolphins, both at 6-4. So a lot of implications to these games this weekend.
Yeah, give the Browns credit. I watched that entire game. They keep playing in rainstorms, but they've won 2 of 3. Good for Cleveland. They won. It was an ugly W. And you know what? It doesn't matter. It was good.
It doesn't.
Enjoy the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Line News.
Super Bowl champ and a Hall of Famer. He's been on NFL Fox's #1 show on Sunday for over 2 decades. He's our friend. He's Howie Long, and he is joining us here on a Monday in the Herd. So I was saying to start the show, Howie, I grew up in a generation where boxing was huge. Patrick Ewing stayed at Georgetown for 4 years, and the Raiders every Sunday were in a late afternoon game that felt like a playoff game. Last night, I felt like, wow, the Raiders feel like they're back. As a former Raider watching that, how did it feel for you?
Yeah, I agree. I think John, you go back to the Tuck rule in New England and kind of the unfinished business that he had and wanting to come back, and obviously it's a great contract, but I think one of the big reasons why he wanted to come back was to finish the deal. And Derek, the thing that stood out to me, and one of the great things you get with no fans in the stadium, is you can hear everything.
Yeah.
And watching Derek at the line, he is a full extension of John Gruden. They are kind of, when you're looking at a coach and a quarterback, you're looking at 2 elevators, and at some point they pass and they're at their peak. I think right now is kind of Derek Carr's peak in this offense. And I think John's comfort level with him and an understanding of who they are. They're a physical offense. And it's interesting because it's a contrast in styles. When you look at Kansas City, this game was all about, forcing Kansas City to go on 10, 12, 14-play drives, test their resolve and being patient because they want triples and home runs. And you want to force them to take singles and doubles and rally to the ball and make the tackle. And for the most part, they did that. But also Kansas City was up to the task.
Yeah.
And they don't walk out of that stadium thinking, the Raiders, that game was a fluke, a few weeks back.
Yep.
They could have walked out of there with a loss very easily.
Yeah. So the opposite of the Raiders, which are a physical team, is Green Bay. And I've said this, they're the convertible sports car of the NFL. Nobody looks cooler in good weather than Green Bay. But when it gets...
That's ironic because it's Green Bay.
Yes. But yet, in cold weather or physical games or the second half against the Colts, it doesn't look like they're up for the fight. And you played in this league a long time. Can finesse teams become physical teams after Thanksgiving? Can they?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting quandary because, they're up 14 points at one point.
Yeah.
When you're up 14 points, that's when you want to throw the body blows. That's when you want to possess the football, take time off the clock, steal possessions, force that offense to sit on the sidelines. And, Indianapolis, conversely, is a very physical team, particularly on their defensive front. DeForest Buckner, I know you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
I remember him as a freshman at Oregon, walking on the field, and those 2 freshmen, were on the field, those 2 freshman defensive tackles. My gosh. And they make it difficult for you to be physical.
Yeah.
I think to me, it's the turnovers with them. And if you're not going to be a physical team and you can't close games out in the traditional way, you can't turn the football over.
Yep.
And they turned the football over. They were up 14. And is it the end of the world? No. They're still 2 games up in the division. And last year they were a 13-3 team. They beat the teams they were supposed to beat. They got mauled by the physical team.
Yep.
And that's the question, whether it's Tampa Bay, and we've seen it a couple of times this year where Minnesota ran the ball down their throat a bit.
Yep.
They have to become a team that can close a game out when they have a lead. As you know, they're not necessarily like, conversely, Kansas City, he plays from behind all the time.
Yeah.
And he's great at it. And I think Andy Reid and that offense and all the weapons, they're a lot to deal with in terms of playing from behind. Look at their playoff run last year. They came back from double digits down in each game, including the Super Bowl. So last night for them, end of game, that's what we do. Yeah. Now in Green Bay, I don't want to say front runner, but when you're up 14 points, you got to close a game out, particularly on the road.
Yep. I got to ask you, in the NFL, so much of the NFL is fit. And a couple weeks ago, Chris Cooley came on our show, the former Pro Bowl tight end for the Washington football team, and he said,
he's a character.
Yeah, but he said, he goes, I like Wentz, and I like the Eagles. I'm not sure they fit the Foles Super Bowl. He goes, something doesn't work. And I sat there and I thought, Sam Darnold and Carson Wentz, there's a lot of it. Maybe they need a reboot. They need a reset. Could you make an argument with Wentz? There's going to be 7 teams that need a quarterback. Maybe he's best served elsewhere and it's time to move on?
It's a fascinating situation, one that I'm very familiar with, having a son that played there and won a Super Bowl. He's an MVP candidate. He's probably going to win the MVP if he doesn't get hurt at the game that we covered out in L.A. That being said, he gets hurt, Foles comes in, they catch lightning in a bottle. The defense is very good. They can close a game out. They can be physical. They can be creative. And Nick is a guy who, when he's hot, he's great, and when he's not, he's not. Carson, I've heard people try to overanalyze Carson. To me, it's a mindset problem. Never, ever, ever being willing to give up on a play. Never, ever, ever forcing the ball into double coverage. I don't understand it. I think he's great physically, and I'm a big Carson Wentz fan. But I'm not sure whether it's a lack of accountability when you go to the sideline. When you make that kind of throw and it's Jimmy Johnson on the sideline, you're going to get an earful.
Right.
I don't know. Everyone has a different way of handling quarterbacks, and it's kind of like the elephant in the room that, you can't say that to him. It's like the star on a show. It's you walk on eggshells to try to get a point across, or maybe you speak to the room, and in reality, you're speaking to one person.
Yeah.
And everyone in the room knows who you're talking to, but you're not directly talking to that person.
Yeah. Well, Howie Long is joining us, the Hall of Famer, 8 Pro Bowls, inducted into the Hall of Fame 20 years ago. So part of being in a Hall of Fame is availability. I think fit matters. I saw Joe Burrow get hurt yesterday, and it was sick to my stomach. In fact, I DM'd him last night, and he responded. I said, God, I'm just sick. And I look at Joe Burrow, and when I look at him, I think, great talent. I worry that the franchise can support him. Do you ever worry about that?
No question, Colin. I think you look at the history of quarterbacks. Go back to Jim Plunkett, way back. Jim Plunkett went to the Patriots, who were a horrible organization.
Yeah.
And much like Burrow, they threw the ball way too much, and the protection was not great, and took a lot of hits. If you look at the number of throws that team has made this year, they're in the top 5. If you look at the number of hits, pressures, and sacks, he's on the top 5 again. To expose that kind of a talent where, this guy comes off the books at number 1, and it's your job while the team is growing to try to, in a way, not essentially protect him, but you protect him with max protection. If you're going to go, for example, when the Rams, and it's a team we all watch out in LA, when the Rams are going deep, how many people do they have in protection off play action pass? It's 6 or 7 initially. So it's a quarterback friendly offense, particularly on a deep ball. And I think for them, it was, we're exposing our kid to too much. We're just exposing him to too much. Now, the kid out with the Chargers is...
Oh, boy, he's good. Oh my God.
Hey, Colin, he does 4 or 5 things a game that make you go, wow.
I think Justin Herbert is... I was thinking this yesterday. There's part of it that's almost Marino, where it looks so easy to throw a football. You're like, God, and there's struggle.
But unlike Dan, the first start he gets, did you see him truck the linebacker on the sideline? I'm like, okay, that's I would if I'm on that team and I'm a defensive end and I'm going in the locker room and I'm 30 years old, I'm pulling him aside and saying, loved it, that was great. I don't want to ever see that again.
I love watching him play, Howie. I love watching Herbert play.
I love him, and I'm hopeful. I don't. How can a team lose that many games with a lead at the end of the game? I'm a big Lynn fan, but something. They've got to get this thing figured out and turned around. Now, part of that is getting people healthy. The defensive ends haven't been healthy together for most of the year.
Well, that's why they keep.
That's part of their team.
Yeah, that's why they keep losing leads. They like Anthony Lynn and they get a lead, but they have no pass rushers, and I think some of that is solved with injuries. But I'm with you. When I watch Justin Herbert, I've always had this. I remember watching Michael Jordan years ago. It's like 20 years ago, and I remember thinking, there's a bunch of guys in the NBA that are 6'6". Why does it look so easy for him? Herbert makes it look
hard
easy.
To explain other than. Well, while you're bringing up Michael Jordan, who's the only guy that could hold Michael Jordan to 17 points?
Dean Smith, yeah.
Okay, so who's the only guy that can make Justin Herbert look like a fringe first-round draft pick?
Is it the coach?
The Oregon offense. You go to the bowl game, they cut him loose, and then you go to the Senior Bowl. He cuts it loose there. And if Burrow hadn't had the kind of year he had with the kind of players he had around him, with the team he had and the coordinator that he had that's now in Carolina, I'm not sure if they had, they weren't trusting their eyes. It's kind of like, it's easy to see,
right?
But it's not easy to see. Yeah. Particularly a quarterback, I think it's the most difficult position to forecast from high school to college, college to pro, and the kid is like a 4.2.
Yeah.
He's kind of a pseudo-relative with the Wilcox family. Dave and I went in the Hall of Fame together up in Oregon, and they love him. They said the kid is the genuine article.
Howie, we got to run. You're a Hall of Famer. We always appreciate you coming on the show on a Monday, bud. Thank you so much.
Anytime, partner. Say hi to everybody.
I will. Colin right, Colin wrong, top of the hour. Coming up, if you're a Cowboy fan, it's not just about the win yesterday over Minnesota, but what you discovered. That's next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You still pay for cable to get Lifetime. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're basically a seasoned detective, and you're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Each week on Solve, you will untangle a case that has pushed detectives to their limits. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence from interrogations, crime scenes, and witness testimony to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. One crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
I'm Mandy B, former former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
I'm Wheezy, former tech exec, now podcaster, comedy writer, and I make up half of the Horrible Decisions podcast. We combine comedy, raunchiness, all in effort to destigmatize kinks and normalize conversations that are normally taboo, like sex, dating, and relationships. Make sure you tune in this Monday so you can hear conversations like these.
He sets up the phone, he bends over in the... Do y'all want to see it?
No.
We have never suggested cheating, bro. So I'm not going to tell her to cheat on this man. Otherwise, it's great.
Why is Future Doctor?
Are you serious?
I'm just asking. I don't want no beef on horrible decisions. Maybe that was a horrible decision to ask that question.
Wait. Join us every Monday on the iHeart app, the #1 place for podcasts. And don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeart Radio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Huge news from yesterday's free-to-play Super 6 contest. 8 players went a perfect 6 for 6 and split Terry Bradshaw's $1 million. The Colts beating the Packers by 3 in overtime sealed the deal. Congratulations to all 8 winners. And for the record, Colin, you correctly predicted the Colts to win by 3 or more in that game. Your next chance to win Terry's money will be on Thursday for the Thanksgiving showdown between the Cowboys and the Washington football team. Download the Fox Super 6 app and make your picks for free before that game kicks off for your chance to win big. And for top stories, scores, and more, go to the Fox Sports app.
So the Dallas Cowboys snapped their 4-game losing streak, and they actually went to Minnesota and won, which is not easy. I've been on the Vikings all year as the best team with a losing record, and this was not a good loss. But here's the thing about Dallas. The winner in this whole season, I mean, the NFC East is unwatchable. The NFC East is the relative you invite to Thanksgiving that nobody likes. You tolerate it. Nobody's really enjoying the 4-hour experience, right? Like, somebody's going to make the playoffs out of this division. Dallas wins on Thanksgiving. They'll be in first place in the division. It's all dreck. It's all awful. But the two things that I took away from yesterday is Dallas looked prepared. So when you lose a quarterback like Dak or any quarterback in the middle of a season, you're just bailing water. Dallas coaches got some extra time to prepare. Andy Dalton looked good. They ran the football, and they looked like a real competent team. Offensively, they were competent. Defensively, they're very limited. But here's what we know about Dallas. They may win a division. They're not good this year. Dak's going to return, though. Mike McCarthy's going to return, and they're going to draft some defensive line help. They absolutely have to. Enough drafting wide receivers. That's not their issue. But I thought yesterday they looked smart, they looked prepared, they played hard. Somebody's going to win this awful division, but we know what they are now. Dak is valuable. He is the energy of this team, his leadership. This was a rudderless football team for 3 weeks after he got hurt. They looked better yesterday, but you kind of feel like you know what Dallas is. They're not real good right now. You cannot be a good football team with that defense. They have no pass rush. Kirk Cousins played well. Dalvin Cook played well. Wasn't like Minnesota handed them the game. They relied on the better side of the football, their offense. Zeke, CeeDee Lamb, Gallup. This is the side of the football where Dallas has some real talent. Not a lot on the defensive side outside of Jalen Smith. Their best corner ended up going to Miami. We knew going into the season this is going to be a team that's going to struggle on the back end, and they have. Minnesota moved the ball. Kirk Cousins was very effective. But you know what? McCarthy's an offensive coach. Dak will come back. They'll draft the defensive line. And you feel good today. They were prepared. They look smart. You'd worry about your kids if they had time to prepare for a test and still couldn't get it right. They wouldn't have to ace the test, but if your kid had 2 weeks to prepare for a test and still got a D, that's a problem. It's one thing if your kid's handed a test on short notice and struggles. You maybe have a kid that needs a little extra time. But Dallas had extra time, and it wasn't even winning. They looked smart. They looked clever. They looked well prepared. And they haven't all season. And so I'm like, all right, draft on the defense, 7, 8 draft picks, use all of them on defense. Dak will come back, maybe take, at some point, trade down, get an offensive lineman. But, I mean, the division's a wreck. They're going to get to the playoffs. That's not an issue. And that doesn't prove anything. But, got extra time, smart, prepared, had fight. That's good. Colin right, Colin wrong, top of hour 2. Next.
I'm Kate Berlin. I'm Jacqueline Novak. We're comedians, best friends, and consumerist hogs, hemorrhaging cash in the wellness world. That's why we made a podcast, Poog, with the Big Money Players Network and iHeartRadio. Though we suffer from no ailments, we are looking to heal. For us, salvation lies in the next product, practice, or potion. This is our hobby. This is our hell. This is our naked desire for free products. This is Poog. That's P-O-O-G. Poog on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. One crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
Hey everybody, it's Ben Higgins.
And it's Ashley I, and we're the hosts of the Almost Famous podcast.
I was the Bachelor, and know firsthand how dating 25 people at one time is not easy.
And I was on the show a time or 2 or 4, but I met my husband, so I'm proof that the process works.
We do interviews with the cast members creating the headlines.
And we know pretty much everyone, so we're a reliable source.
Listen to Almost Famous on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Ever wondered why there are 2 ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go on a Monday, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. I'm in a radio studio today and tomorrow. And then some vacation time for everybody, right? We'll be on radio only Wednesday. Abundance of caution, I am not in the TV studios today. Fox PR released a statement, so this is out there. Somebody on the Fox NFL show got COVID, so I was part of that group, so I'm just staying away from everybody. Abundance of caution, have tested negative 3 times. We're all good, and got plenty of stuff to talk about. Joy Taylor's joining me. Joy, how are you? How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. Great day of football. Looking forward to tonight's game, another big game.
Yeah, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers host the Los Angeles Rams. Not like it matters, but I've got the Bucs tonight. No Andrew Whitworth for the Rams at left tackle. I think it's going to be a problem. But Mondays are Colin right, Colin wrong. I have plenty of strong opinions. Hold ourselves accountable when we miss, and here we go on a Monday.
Where Colin was right.
Been saying for years, Derek Carr reminds me of Tony Romo, and Tony Romo's going to get some Hall of Fame votes. He was on display last night. The guy's absolutely on fire. He's dead solid accurate. He's more mobile than half the quarterbacks in the league. He has total command of the offense, and he has a presence. He's completing 69.7% of his throws. He doesn't have the biggest arm, but I got to tell you, when you watch the Raiders last night, 23 of 31, 120 passer rating, you feel like he has complete and utter control of this offense. John Gruden knows he's got a winner, and Derek Carr was struggling pre-Gruden, and now they're in harmony.
Where Colin was wrong.
Thank God for the Colts, blazing 5-1-3. We're 25-28-1 on the year. The Chiefs lost. I think America lost on that. Andy Reid off a bye is generally perfect, covering the spread. You know what? To be announced tonight. It's been a weird year. I went 1-4, 4-1, 1-4, 4-1, and now 0-1-3. It's a weird year.
Where Colin was right.
I said Friday, Sean Payton's resume, he's earned my respect to name the starter of the Saints. Taysom Hill, short term, probably a better fit for the coaching staff, and Taysom Hill was excellent. 18 of 23, 108 quarterback rating, rush for 2 touchdowns. Taysom Hill has limitations, but running quarterbacks and the element of surprise they bring is a problem. And Atlanta had been playing really well, and suddenly they weren't. Yes, Jameis Winston is a better thrower of the football and is a more traditional quarterback. But Sean Payton's trying to win 3 games. That's all he cares about. And Taysom Hill is a curveball that Atlanta, a team they'll play in 2 weeks, just wasn't ready for.
Where Colin was wrong.
Carson Wentz and the Eagles, I can no longer defend either, and I've been a huge fan of both. Carson leads the NFL in picks. He leads it in fumbles. Doug Peterson, what is your offensive identity? I don't know what it is. What do they do well? They're finally healthy now. You can't use those excuses. I am officially off the Eagles.
Where Colin was right?
Well, this is not second guessing. This is first preaching. We told you, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, this was our greatest concern. I said if I was Joe Burrow, Carson Palmer threatened to retire. He did. He said, I'm retiring if you don't trade me from Cincinnati. I said if I was Joe Burrow, I'd do everything I can not to play for him. The Bengals have an obligation to protect Joe Burrow, and like Andrew Luck and the Colts, they did not. And this is not second guessing. We've been on this for a year. Too many throws, no running game support, and the organization, shocker, Cincinnati is letting us down.
Where Colin was wrong.
If the season ended today, the Baltimore Ravens are not a playoff team. I know, I said 16-0, maybe 15-1. It's not just a can't play from behind thing, because they led by 11 points in the second half. Yes, Lamar Jackson from behind isn't as good, and there are certain throws teams are begging him to make. What they're doing is filling up the running lanes. They're bringing people in the box and saying, throw it, we dare you. Right now, they do not feel, against good teams, like a playoff team.
Where Colin was right?
Never bought into Matt Patricia. I said before, looks matter. First impressions matter. He's kind of sloppy, hat on backwards guy. I've never thought the Lions players buy into him. And I made a call this weekend to somebody in the NFL I respect. And I said, like, what's the room like? What's the temperature? And he said, listen, you don't get a lot of buy-in with Matt Patricia. Didn't play. And there's a lot of arrogance. And there's a lot of, like, New England sense of entitlement. Like, I won. Players don't buy into him. How do you lose to a rebuilding team, to an XFL quarterback, and you get shut out with Matt Stafford? I mean, I've said before, Matt Stafford's a lot of stats and not a lot of big wins, but he's talented. This was bottoming out. That was players not buying into the coach.
Where Colin was wrong.
I've been saying for the last 2 weeks, I thought the Minnesota Vikings were the best team with a losing record. But the problem is, all their talents on the offensive side, Kirk Cousins played very well. He really did. And Dalvin Cook's amazing. You can't lose to the Cowboys at home. You just can't do it. And Green Bay lost, so that's good. Detroit lost, so in their division, they're not losing ground, but they are now a 4-6 team that struggles to get good offenses off the field, and that is their reality.
Where Colin was wrong.
Rob Pelinka and the Lakers had an absolutely unbelievable last week. I've said, the Lakers don't feel well run for the last several years. They got Montrezl Harrell, a young athletic big. They landed Marc Gasol, not only a great passer, but a tremendous low post defender. They got Dennis Schroeder, who can actually run a team, 18 points a game, and they throw in Wes Matthews, a 3-and-D guy, can hit a three, can D you up. Right now, I would make the argument, I know this sounds crazy, this is the most talent potentially LeBron's ever had. In Cleveland, he had stars but no depth. He's got depth. In Miami, he had stars but no size and didn't have a good backcourt. He's got now both. AD and Marc Gasol are 2 of the top 3 or 4 defensive bigs in the league. They got younger, they got deeper, they got more athletic, they got a couple of shooters. Home runs. This is as good a collection of 7 or 8 basketball players I believe LeBron's ever played with, and I include Miami. And I like Wade and Bosch and Battier, but that team had no size. They were sketchy at point guard. Lakers, kudos, tip of the cap, great week for Rob Pelinka. By the way, don't want to spend too much time on this because Philadelphia is not worth a discussion. But Doug Peterson, the coach, he's being asked now, should you just bench Carson Wentz? And here's his response.
If you get to that spot, whether you don't start him or you bench, I think you're sending him the wrong message to your football team that the season's over, and that's a bad message. And we have to work through this. Times, when times get tough, it's sometimes that might be the easy thing to do.
I said this a couple weeks ago. If you're reckless as a quarterback, Carson Wentz and Sam Darnold, they're reckless. They have an it. They have talent. If my quarterback doesn't have an it, doesn't have an arm, there's got to be something special for me to give you another chance or another chance. Darnold and Carson Wentz, because there's a certain athletic ability and it factor, they'll get other chances. This morning I thought there's 8 teams that'll probably draft a quarterback. Jags, New England, Washington, Indy, Chicago, San Francisco, Denver. I can make the argument they all need quarterbacks, maybe a couple more. Wentz and Darnold are on the market, and there's teams that need to be more dynamic at that position. But I almost wonder if it's time for a reset. It's just in the last couple years, it doesn't feel right. I was in a conversation with my wife not long ago, and I said, if you want to buy a house, don't talk yourself into buying a new house. Let the house talk you into buying it. Or in other words, if something doesn't feel right, don't talk yourself into it. This puppy doesn't feel right now. I don't know what it is. Chris Cooley, the Pro Bowl tight end who played in that division and against Wentz, was on our show a couple weeks ago and said, something's just not right.
I think Carson Wentz is one of those interesting guys that maybe isn't a good fit for Philadelphia. To me, it seems like there's been issues with Wentz since he went down and Foles came in. Going back to that next year where they had the giant billboard of Nick Foles and you could tell it hurt Carson Wentz's feelings.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's an incredible playmaker. Wentz is a guy that can do anything you want him to do. He'll extend plays. He's great off script. He can make every throw on the football field. But at the same time, he's a guy that makes a ton of mistakes. And like you mentioned, he's a guy that ends up injured all the time. So I think that you really have a question mark on what you want to do with Carson Wentz in the future. Someone will pay him.
Yeah.
Because he's an outstanding talent. But I don't know if the fit's perfect in Philadelphia.
Listen, quarterback is, certain sports, golf, baseball, and quarterback, certain sports, certain positions, confidence matters. Sam Darnold doesn't feel like he trusts the Jets. I'm not sure the Jets trust him. And Carson Wentz, something's wrong upstairs. I don't have the answers. Divorces happen. Reset. He'll get an offer. Carson Wentz will get an offer. Darnold will get an offer. But right now, it just doesn't look right. Trent Dilfer's around the corner on a Monday. Peter King, Tony Gonzalez, too, today.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you'd like.
You know exactly where you were when the Golden State Killer was arrested. You still pay for cable to get Lifetime. You're a moderator on the Zodiac Killer subreddit. You're basically a seasoned detective, and you're in search of a new challenge. Enter Solve, the hit podcast that puts you at the center of the investigation. Each week on Solve, you will untangle a case that has pushed detectives to their limits. Solve is like no other murder mystery podcast. You'll piece together evidence from interrogations, crime scenes, and witness testimony to track down killers hiding in plain sight. Your cases are waiting for you. New episodes of Solve are available now on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. One crime, 4 suspects. Can you solve it?
Hey, Caitlin Durante.
Yeah, Jamie Loftus?
Don't you wish there were a podcast that examined some of everyone's favorite movies using an intersectional feminist lens?
Why, yes, I do.
Well, good news. It exists, and it's our podcast.
What? How did I not know?
I know.
The Bechtel Cast is a weekly show where we invite our favorite comics, writers, and film critics to bring one of their favorite movies and tear it to shreds with us, using the Bechtel test as a jumping-off point for discussion.
Oh, like how Indiana Jones and Consent is, not great?
Or how Tangerine is one of the greatest romps of all time.
Or how the Cheetah Girls are feminist icons with a streak of trouble in capitalism.
Recent episodes cover Space Jam, Harriet the Spy, Set It Off, The Witch, and Little Miss Sunshine.
With amazing guests like Sashir Zameda, Jenna Ushkowitz, Lindsay Ellis, and more.
New episodes of the Bechtelcast come out every Thursday. Listen on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, this whole ad passed the Bechtel test.
Well, except for Indiana Jones.
Wow, he ruins everything.
An NFL tradition continues on Fox as Washington takes on Zeke and the Cowboys. Thanksgiving Day, 4 Eastern, only on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
Somebody, regrettably, is going to win that division. So, Washington's playing a little better, and, Dallas had their best game of the year, it looked like. So, Trent Dilfer's, a couple years ago, he decided, I'm going to go coach high school football and pay football back for all it did for me. And he went to Nashville, Tennessee, to Lipscomb Academy, and they had a very good first year. Here's his second year. They won this past weekend, 56-13. They beat the defending state champs in Tennessee on their home field. And the championship game is December 3rd. They've won 11 straight games. Trent Dilfer, the Andy Reid of Nashville, Tennessee high school football, is now joining us live. 56-13, a win. And Trent, it's great having you on. First of all, congratulations. That has to be... And all the things you've done in football, I don't know where this is in the pecking order, but that's got to be an all-timer for you.
It really is. I'm so happy for this community. The boys, they've worked so hard. We still got some work to do, but it's been a great ride, and just this entire community's buy-in, the coaching staff, the players, administration, parents, you name it. Everybody's rallied and really allowed these boys to have a special season.
Oh, that's great. So, Trent, we know Patrick Mahomes has a great arm, but I don't know if you ever had him in one of your Elite 11 classes, but there is a confidence with him, just kind of this, his ability to play from behind. When you look at him, is some of that like genetics? He is so comfortable with a minute to go. He's so comfortable playing from behind, and as we know, many great quarterbacks have not been, that's not their strength.
We did have him in camp, and I asked him if he was going to pursue football, and he said he wasn't. He was going to pursue baseball. So I'm still angry to this day that he didn't say he was going to play football. Of course we would have had him. You nailed it with confidence. He has such physical confidence and confidence in his preparation and skill set that he never panics. There's never, ever, ever a moment of flinch, a moment of panic. He doesn't hurry things up because there's chaos in the pocket, or he sees a new defense, or the time on the clock, or the score in the game. There's just this calmness to him that allows him to do things that frankly I've only seen one other person do, and that's Brett Favre. And I would argue that Patrick already is better in the game situations than Brett was. He's just an amazing talent to watch. He physically can do anything. So it's not hyperbole when you hear these people say he's as talented as any quarterback that's ever played football. I would co-sign on the statements. But then there's that extra thing that you mentioned. It's this supreme confidence in his ability, in his offensive system, and tackling the world when the world's against you. I mean, there's just nothing that makes him get out of his comfort zone, and that's why you see these phenomenal things week in and week out from him.
Listen, so much, the program you've turned around, coaching matters, and it can really matter for a quarterback that feels shaken, like Derek Carr. So, obviously, Gruden and Derek Carr, this is the best. It's almost as, I look at Derek Carr, who I've always liked, and I'm like, I'm not sure if he can play better for the talent he has. So, what do you think Gruden did to turn him around? Because he was really struggling 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think you got to give Olsen, offensive coordinator, Gruden, and Derek all equal credit here. John came in, he said, I'm going to change everything you've ever learned. And Derek's been taught some good stuff. It's not like he was chopped liver. One, Derek bought in. most veteran quarterbacks are like, what are you talking about? I'm pretty darn good. But he bought in, and he was totally open to a retooling of everything, of his operation, let's call it that, because it's more than just his technique or how he looked at the game, but the entire operation. He's become a coach on the field. I think every great play caller wants their quarterback to read their mind. I tell my quarterback all the time, hey, bro, at some point you got to read my mind. We got to be thinking the exact same thoughts when a call comes in. And John's accelerated that with Derek. And it's like having a coach on the football field. People talked about how cool it is to listen to the quarterback run the show at the line of scrimmage because there's no crowd noise. And I get it. If you're not accustomed to hearing all the stuff that an NFL quarterback does at the line of scrimmage, this could kind of blow your mind. But what Derek's able to do is John can give a call, and Derek can just pour gasoline on that call with his ability to get up to the line of scrimmage, look at defensive line technique, linebacker profiles, secondary profiles, matchups, protection, run game, action game, movement game. He's got the whole toolbox at his disposal, much like Peyton Manning did back with the Indianapolis Colts, and he's just done a great job of managing that. He's also making great decisions. You know, the old West Coast philosophy was all about getting the ball in playmakers' hands as fast as possible. There's 2 checkdowns last night that Derek makes in the first half. It's like he had eyes in the back of his head. He gets 4 deep into his progression, hits the checkdown, and they go for 10 to 15, 20-yard gains. I mean, this is mastery of the West Coast offense, both at the line of scrimmage and after the ball is snapped.
So let's go to the opposite of this, Joe Burrow. Obviously, Joe's going to be fine starting next year. I mean, he took some hits. He's very talented. He's a very confident kid, and the injury stinks. But how long can a Joe Burrow take a beating, and then the light goes off? Then the switch flips, and then he just no longer wants to get hit like that. Are you worried that another year like this, of hit 77 times halfway through a season, it starts to take a toll psychologically on a young player?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we talked about this early in the year. Nobody argues that Joe Burrow is a phenomenal talent. All 3 of these rookie quarterbacks are ridiculously talented. I think all 3 are going to be great players. The danger in playing them early, for every Justin Herbert experience, which we can go on and on, how fantastic he is, how it's worked out unbelievably well for the Chargers, there's 5 Joe Burrows, where you take a super talented alpha male, you put him in there who's not willing to give up on a play, tries to be the hero on every single play, but you put him with a bad team, and you're gambling that his confidence is going to get wrecked over time, that his body is going to age too early because of the hits he's taking. And I would be very concerned if I was Joe Burrow going back to the same situation next year unless they make some drastic changes to better protect him both with talent and with scheme. If you watch Cincinnati play, it's not what Derek Carr's doing in Oakland. It's not what Herbert's doing with the Chargers. It's a lot of true drop back 5-6 man protection where you expose your quarterback to unnecessary hits, and he's every bit as athletic as Herbert. They could do a ton of movement stuff with him like they do Herbert. They could do a lot of condensed formations if they had the creativity to do it to protect them. They haven't done that, and now you're looking at a quarterback who's having a phenomenal rookie year, having to sit the rest out. So this goes back to earlier season conversations that it's not so simple, people, just to say play them. It's one of the dumbest comments made in today's narratives on young quarterbacks. Every situation is different, and you definitely are taking a risk if you play your young quarterback too soon and expose them to too much stuff.
I've always been a big fan of Carson Wentz, but there does come a point that everybody in life, divorces happen, resets happen. Drew Brees got a reset. Do you get to a point in Philadelphia where maybe it's the Nick Foles statue? I don't know. I'm not there. But would you think about, listen, it's just not, we drafted a kid, Jalen Hurts, something's not working, the fans are eating him alive, we're a loud city, something's in his head. Do you reach a point in Philly they may have to consider that?
Well, let's talk about something else first. And yes, I do think it needs to be considered. Doug Peterson's a friend, but if Doug called me and said, what the heck's going on, I'd say, coach him harder. Quit being so soft. You can't teach talent, but you can teach and coach discipline. You can teach and coach discernment. You can teach and coach team ball. There's been a ton of fantastic talents. I'll use Brett again. Brett Favre was reckless, off the field, on the field. He was a mess. Uberly talented. And Mike Holmgren and that staff coached him as hard as any human being's ever been coached. Steve Young was coached hard by that staff in San Francisco when he came in and played like his hair was on fire and every play wanted to run around and be frenetic, and they coached him out of that. You can coach all this stuff out of Carson, and the team deserves you to coach this out of Carson. He's wildly talented, as talented as any player in this league, but he is playing awful football for an extended period of time, and I blame the coaching. If my quarterback did that, I would say that is my fault. It is our job to coach him harder and to coach this stuff out of him. I can't coach his talent, but I can coach the rest. And I think they've just done an awful job of being too soft on him and let him continue to do the reckless thing he does that costs his team games. Now, if they're going to say, well, we can't coach him any harder, we've tried all this stuff, then it's time to move on. Because this stuff is not going to change unless every single moment of every single day is relentless coaching of Carson Wentz to not make him so reckless with the football.
That's good stuff. We'll end on that. 11 straight wins for Lipscomb Academy. They play in the state championship December 3rd. Wow. 56-13. That must feel great. That must be an amazing feeling, because you told me for years, I asked you about coaching, and you're like, oh, NFL coaching, you have no life. I'd never see my kids. But you seem to be having the time of your life.
I am, and we have a huge challenge. You know, the thing about coaching, I told the kids this a few weeks ago when we were rolling. I said the problem with winning and winning championships is you really never get to smell your farts. You never really get to enjoy it. You never really get to sit back and breathe it in until it's all over. And we're taking that approach. So we didn't celebrate. We went and shook their hands. We got on the bus. We came home. We went back to work the next day. We're working today. We don't think we've accomplished anything. We want to finish it on December 3rd, and then we'll give them a few hours to celebrate before they go play basketball and other things that they do as kids.
That's what high school sports is like. We got to play another sport. Trent, great talking to you.
Thanks, brother. See ya.
Yeah, that's great. He told me for years, I used to ask Trent, I said, you should go into coaching. He's like, oh, NFL coaching is the worst. Crazy billionaires, you never see your wife, you don't see your kids grow up. And he's, high school, you get a little bit more of a life, and the players listen to you. All of them. Joy Taylor with the news.
Heard on the news. This is the Herd Line News.
Well, a very well-coached team is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they kept their undefeated season going with a dominant win over the Jacksonville Jaguars Sunday. Pittsburgh's defense held Jacksonville to only 206 total yards and 3 points, and intercepted Jake Luton 4 times on their way to their 10th win. They're the 18th team in the Super Bowl era to start 10-0. 10 of those clubs made the Super Bowl, and 6 won it all. So, trending positively for the undefeated Steelers in that regard.
Minka Fitzpatrick made plays, and the other thing is, Joy, they do appear to be getting better, and not just because they're playing like bad teams, but like you watched yesterday, now they're playing with the confidence of a 10-0 team. Like they're looking for knockouts now. They're playing with a ton of confidence.
Yeah, that's how you need to beat that Jacksonville team. And I know Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger were talking a lot about Jacksonville leading up to the game, that they're taking them very seriously. And if you look at their record against Jacksonville, they should be. Jacksonville has had their number for the past couple years. So they did what they were supposed to do, which is dominate them yesterday. Now they play the Ravens on Thanksgiving night, so that's a very big game. The Ravens coming off a heartbreaking loss this weekend. So really looking forward to that. But Chase Claypool became the first wide receiver in the Super Bowl era and 4th in league history with at least 10 total touchdowns in his first 10 games.
Wow.
So they have a star in him. And Mike Tomlin said after the game, it wasn't perfect, but nothing is perfect about us except our record.
I love that.
So he's flexing a little bit as as he should be. But that's going to be a great game on Thursday. Looking forward to that. So the Texans got their third win of the season and first against a team other than Jacksonville with a 27-20 victory over the Patriots yesterday. Deshaun Watson was great. 75% completion of his passes for 344 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 36 yards and a touchdown. Cam Newton threw for 365 yards and a touchdown, but was limited to a season-low 6 yards rushing. So New England falls to 4-6. And it's first time since 2009, and that the Patriots will have at least 6 losses in a regular season.
Yeah, they have been the opposite of New England. You have no idea what you're getting week to week with New England. You have no idea. And it's COVID, it's injuries, it's players opting out. But they just don't have the depth of talent. If 1 or 2 guys are hurt, they can't move the football. It's that simple.
Well, it's just one of those years with New England, and I know that New England fans and a lot of the media, just I think out of respect for what the Patriots have done over the past 20 years, and out of respect for Bill Belichick, didn't want to say that the Patriots were going to fall off this year, COVID aside. But we talked about it a lot before the season started when they were pitching us Jarrett Stidham, and that this is still New England's division. Like, no, it's not. This is not a good football team. There's a reason why Tom Brady isn't there. He could have easily finished out his legacy and his career in New England if he thought it was a situation that he could possibly be successful in, and they would be better with Tom Brady. And I think that they would have been better had Cam Newton not unfortunately tested positive. They lost a lot of momentum there, but this is also just not a great football team, and it's not the end of the world. I think Bill Belichick has something up his sleeve. They'll figure it out eventually. It's just not going to be this year. So the AFC East now has the Bills obviously atop at 7-3, Dolphins 6-4, and then we know what the Jets are, and obviously New England. But it's between the Bills and the Dolphins now. The Bills' remaining schedule is the Chargers, then at the 49ers, the Steelers, at the Broncos, at the Patriots, and then last game against the Dolphins. Dolphins' remaining schedule is at the Jets, the Bengals, the Chiefs, Patriots, at the Raiders, and at the Bills. So their final schedule is a little bit easier than the Bills, but I think this will end up coming down to, as you've said many times, the last game of the season, which would be Bills and Dolphins in Buffalo. So Tom Brady and the Buccaneers are a 4.5-point favorite tonight over the Rams, according to Fox Bet. But the team's performance in prime time hasn't been great this season. 2 of their 3 losses have come in night games, so Bruce Arians altered the practice schedule to help the team prepare. And when asked if he thought it would help Tampa tonight, Tom Brady said, "I hope so. It's about our process and trying to go out there and do a good job. Whatever it takes for us to play well, that's what we're focused on." So a very big game tonight to finish out the big weekend. Remember, they had the Thursday night loss to the Bears. They lost 2019. Then obviously the Saints blow out 38-3.
Yeah, the reality is if the Rams can run the football, they have a chance to win or cover. And if they can't, and I have my questions without Andrew Whitworth, it's a long night because Goff, when comfortable with a run game, is an excellent quarterback. When he doesn't, he's very average. He dictate terms. If McVay has a lead, he's never lost in his career. So that means when they're comfortable, they run the ball, they set the tempo, they get a lead, Rams win. The first half will tell you the story of this football game, Joy. You'll know 3 series in how it's going to go for the Rams. Joy of the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
By the way, Tua got benched yesterday. I just had a couple of thoughts. Number 1 is Miami couldn't run the football if you watch that game. And Miami ran for 56 yards. So that meant Tua was in a situation with no running game, trailing in a game. It was his first obstacle. This is the way it works. Denver's always been the Bermuda Triangle for young quarterbacks and old quarterbacks too. Tom Brady always struggled there. First game in cold, first game high altitude. He played in Hawaii, then Alabama, then he goes to Miami. This is why the Vegas odds makers had it as a field goal game. He got behind, they couldn't run. The reality is they benched him. He'll be fine. He's going to start next week. Don't forget, Kyler Murray was 5-10-1 as a rookie. We love him. Josh Allen was 5-6. We like him a lot. So Tua, it's a first for him. First altitude, first cold weather game, probably the first big deficit he's ever played in college with. First time in his life and his career they had no running game. He wasn't getting defensive touchdowns. So they're way ahead of their rebuild. Don't forget, Miami, this time last year, Miami was the worst team in the NFL. 1 year ago today, they were the worst team in the NFL trading players. So they're way ahead of schedule. He's going to be fine. The Dolphins next 2 weeks, Jets and Cincinnati, they'll win both. is around the corner on a Monday.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
In the summer and autumn of 2020, the city of Portland, Oregon became the center of a vast media blitz. Thousands of viral videos showing marching federal agents and police officers, tear gas, black-clad anarchists and fires went viral all over the internet. What didn't go viral was the truth, because the story of Portland's Black Lives Matter movement and of the Portland protests of 2020 is so much stranger than I think the mainstream media would ever be willing to cover. I was there, and more importantly, the people that I talked to for my new show, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, were there. Through their experiences, you'll learn the truth, both about Portland and about what's coming for the rest of the United States in the next few years. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Street Politicians is a show for the people. I am Tamika D. Mallory, the one who is always right.
And I'm my son, the one who is never wrong.
And catch us every Wednesday on the Black Effect Network, breaking down social and civil rights issues, pop culture, and politics in hopes of pushing our culture forward to make the world a better place for generations to come. But that's not all. We will also have special guests to add their thoughts on the topics, as well as break down different political issues with local activists in their community.
You might not always agree, you might not always be right, you're not going to always be wrong, but we're going to always be okay.
If you like to be informed and to expand your thoughts, then listen to Street Politicians on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
Pure Talk USA, grab your phone, dial pound 250 and say Colin Coward. Get 50% off your first month of Pure Talk USA. Simply Smarter Wireless. He's been a Sports Writer of the Year 3 times. Football Morning in America by Peter King at NBCSports.com, and he is now joining us live. Pro Football Hall of Fame voter for 30 years. So I was saying, I grew up in a generation. Boxing was bigger. College basketball guys like Patrick Ewing would stick around for 4 years, and the Raiders were always wildly fun every Sunday afternoon. It was either against Dan Fouts or the Dolphins and Shula or the Steelers. Everybody was their rival. And I got to tell you, Peter, last night I felt for the first time in years the Raiders were back. That's what it felt like. The coaching, the quarterback, the toughness, the running. What say you?
It makes me long for a round 3 in January.
Yeah.
And look, Colin, that's not ridiculous either. Because look at where the Raiders are right now. If they make the playoffs, they got 4 losses right now. If they make the playoffs, they're going to be probably the 6th or 7th seed, right? And if they make the playoffs, it looks like right now the Chiefs will be the 2nd seed. Now, there's still football left to be played. Chiefs might even be first. You don't know. But, I just hope that however the weird 7-team playoffs, or maybe 8 teams, we'll see, however that works out, I hope it includes a game between the Vegas and Kansas City at Arrowhead.
I'm watching. I haven't done much Cowboy talk in the last 3 weeks. They're just not that interesting. And I was really on the Minnesota Vikings the last 3 weeks. I'm like, I don't care about their record. This is a good football team. Then they lay an egg yesterday, and actually they played well offensively. And we get to a point now where you start talking about getting a new quarterback or getting a new coach. Green Bay is going to win this division. Look at their schedule. What are they going to do in Minnesota? Because they've got a tremendous front office. The offensive talent is uniquely good. What is going to happen at the end of the season in Minnesota? Because this now is a 4-6 football team in a crowded NFC. They don't look like a playoff team, and I think they got too much talent to sit home during the playoffs.
My gut feeling is, unless it's a debacle the last 6 weeks, and I don't think it will be, they play in Jacksonville, Chicago, Detroit. I don't think it's going to be awful down the stretch. I think they bring back Zimmer and Spielman. They like them both a lot. surprised if they made a change. I think they chalk it up to a pandemic year and go at it again in 2021.
You know, yeah. By the way, I saw a quote from Bill Belichick about 3 weeks ago. It was a kind of anonymous quote from somebody that said Belichick kind of thinks this year is a little bit of a joke. So I do think there's guys that are going to save their job in college football and pro due to the pandemic. Now, Sean Payton. My theory on Sean Payton was duct tape works. Sometimes it buys you time, and the Taysom Hill may not be the long-term answer. But to have to face him when you don't have any tape on him, Tebow was a handful. And I looked yesterday and I'm like, was the genius of Sean Payton saying, this isn't a decision for the future of the franchise. I'm trying to win 3 games, and nobody's seen Taysom Hill play before, and it's hard to prepare for.
I think that's part of it, but I think Sean Payton, I mean, look, I go back to the first discussion I ever had with Sean Payton, which was at the scouting combine in 2018. This is almost 3 years ago. It's well over 2.5 years ago. And I had coffee with him one day in Indianapolis, and he was telling me just the story of this guy. And he said, I'm really fascinated by him. He said, I think he can be Steve Young. And so I've just sort of kept that in my back pocket, and every time I brought him up, Sean Payton loves him. He's fascinated by him. What does that mean? I don't know what it means, but I do know, and I talked to Payton last night, and he told me absolutely categorically that he was going to give this shot to Taysom Hill. It's not about, I love Taysom Hill. Said we have invested a lot of time, a lot of energy in this guy, and he's done everything right. And look, Jameis Winston is a fascinating prospect, and I think that Peyton really does like Jameis Winston. But it's not like Jameis Winston, comes in as some, comes in like, say, Steve Young, the backup to Joe Montana, and he say, oh my God, we got to play him. I mean, Jameis Winston's got more interceptions than anybody in football over the last 5 years. So I'm not sure that you should be just devoted to Jameis Winston and said we got to give him a shot. This surprised me a little bit because early on in the week it seemed like it was going to be Jameis, but after listening to Peyton explain why, now I'm not surprised at all.
Peter King joining us. How much of the Joe Burrow injury is just on the organization not protecting him?
Well, Colin, I did something in my column today that basically looked at all quarterbacks who are fairly mobile and, how often do they get exposed, either by running the ball, setting up the throw, or being sacked. And, like Lamar Jackson is right around 40 times a game. I call them exposures, and so, there's a lot of guys who are like Joe Burrow. He gets out, he runs it, and all that, and he had 48.9 exposures per game this year.
Wow.
Which was more than anybody that I didn't do all 32 quarterbacks, I did like 10 of them. But Russell Wilson's at 45. It seems like to me he's gotten used to protecting himself. And I just think that I'm not in any way blaming Zach Taylor. His job on Monday and Tuesday is to figure out a game plan to win a game. He can't say to himself, well, geez, I can't expose Joe Burrow. But I do think that if I were Zach Taylor and I was self-scouting the coaching staff at the end of this year, I would say, we should probably be disciplined in trying not to get Joe Burrow hit as much as he was hit this year. So, again, I do not blame him, but I do say it's probably a learning experience and a very painful one for Zach Taylor.
Read his column. It's always great in a Monday. We are short on time today. Football Morning in America. Peter King, NBC Sports. FoxSports.com. His Monday columns are worth the 25, 35 minutes it takes you. I can hear a fax machine. That's a GM sending him vital information right now. Peter,
all the best, Colin. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much. By the way, mdrivestart.com. One scoop every day. Chocolate mousse in the morning. Nutrition, nutrients. mdrivestart.com. Read Peter King stuff. Yeah, I'll tell you, you look around at some of these teams, and like Green Bay's a good football team. I've seen a flaw. Raiders can't stop people, but God, they're fun to watch. Kansas City, Pittsburgh feel like the two best teams in the league. Watch the Buccaneers tonight against the LA Rams. You'll know by halftime. When I do Rams games, you can tell 2-3 series in. If Goff has time to throw, they're running the football, Tampa's in trouble. If they're not running the football and he's throwing on 2nd and 8 or 3rd and 7, Goff's in trouble. Big night for Tom Brady. The Rams, I've had success betting the Rams this year. They're not real complicated. Goff is comfortable, they win. And you could say, well, that goes for every quarterback. No, it doesn't. Some quarterbacks Mahomes trails all the time. He's not always comfortable. He's sometimes having to play catch up. Deshaun Watson won this weekend. He's not always comfortable. A lot of quarterbacks in this league win when they're not always comfortable. Goff needs to be comfortable. So, final hours coming up. What a weekend. By the way, if you live in Los Angeles, you can't go eat at restaurants anymore starting Wednesday, but your sports teams are eating. Dodgers won the World Series. Lakers, LeBron's best team ever. What a weekend for Rob Pelinka and the Lakers front office staff. That next, The Herd.
Yo, this is Jeezy, urban philosopher, philanthropist, and the host of the Recession Podcast, a production of the Black Effect Podcast Network and iHeartRadio. I'll bring you raw conversations about systemic racism, mental health, life on the streets, and much more. So join me on the Recession Podcast by Jeezy. That's RESESSION Podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer your podcast.
Get ready to laugh and learn. I'm Nick Smith.
I am Flamin' Road. I am he, she, we. He cash a check, she make the money, we spend it.
Laugh and Learn is a weekly podcast bringing you the latest headlines, keeping you politically informed, mixed in with a little pop culture. You never know what you're going to hear. Subscribe and listen to Laugh and Learn on the iHeartRadio app or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
And I'm Jamie Loftus.
And we're the hosts of the Bechtelcast on iHeartRadio.
Each episode, we invite comedians, writers, and film critics to bring their favorite movie and analyze it, and sometimes tear it to shreds.
Using an intersectional feminist lens and the Bechtel test as a jumping-off point for discussion.
It's the funny, comprehensive movie analysis podcast of your dreams.
Recent episodes include Space Jam, Harriet the Spy, and Set It Off.
New episodes of the Bechtelcast come out every Thursday. Listen on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Stephanie Rule, MSNBC anchor and host of the podcast Modern Rules from NBC Think and iHeartRadio. The new season of my podcast is back with more probing conversations that get at the heart of the issues that are keeping us up at night. From sex and dating during COVID to the stark reality that the gender gap is a lot wider than we thought, and the true ramifications of misinformation.
These ideas that coronavirus is really just about government control, that it's infringing on civil liberties, all of these ideas are similar ideas to the anti-vaccine movement.
So where do we go from here? Join me, Stephanie Rule, for the second season of Modern Rules. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to The Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for The Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Here we go, hour number 3, live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. Good stuff. First 2 hours flew by. Howie Long, Trent, Dilfer, Peter, King on a Monday. We're doing this in a radio studio for the next few days. Abundance of caution. I was on a Sunday football show for Fox. Somebody had tested positive, so I've taken 3 or 4 tests since then, all negative, but can't go back into the building for a week or two, so we'll see what happens. Abundance of caution. Joy Taylor is joining me, and Joy, how are you this morning on a Monday? Show is flying by.
I'm doing good. It is flying by. I'm looking forward to tonight. It's a big weekend of football, and really looking forward to the Thursday games as well. Some good ones.
So, it's so funny because everything in sports is to avoid dynasties. If you look in pro sports, if you're number 1, you draft last in the first round. But the reality is there's just 5% of America is either smarter, works harder, better funded, has geographical or revenue advantages, and there's dynasties in every business. Retail, our whole government doesn't want a dynasty. Amazon owns retail. 3 or 4 companies, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, own tech. Dynasties happen. You can't avoid them. And it's just the reality of it. When the Lakers get rolling, it's a more appealing brand. And this weekend, I think LeBron James now is the deepest team he's ever been on. The Lakers went out and stole Montrezl Harrell from the Clippers, a 6th man of the year. Dennis Schroeder, 2nd place 6th man of the year. Marc Gasol, a Morris twin, is back. Right now, the Lakers today go 9 deep. They could actually start a game without LeBron and win. They could start AD, Wes Matthews, KCP, Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, and bring Marc Gasol, Kyle Kuzma, Alex Caruso off the bench. They could win a game. I'm not saying they'd be a big playoff team. They could win games without LeBron. This is the best, deepest roster he's ever had. Miami had 3 stars, but no size and shaky at point guard. This team's got everything. Schroeder can give you 18 points a game, 27-year-old starting the team. You've got Marc Gasol and AD are both big, excellent low post defenders. Gasol's also a great passer. LeBron's the best player in the game. AD could be the 2nd or 3rd best players. You've got star power. KCP had a very good bubble playoff. They are loaded. They got younger. They got deeper. They got less crazy. Rondo and Dwight Howard are out. They're shoot the ball better this year. And I look at it this morning and I'm like, I don't think LeBron's ever had 8 other guys on a team. I don't know if he trusts Kuzma, but Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, AD, Wes Matthews has hit playoff shots. Like, it's a real basketball team. And once again, the Lakers look like they're defending champs, and they are stacked. They are stacked. So, unbelievable weekend for the Lakers, and it's, the Dodgers just won the World Series. They've won their division 7 straight years. They went and got Mookie. Who's dominating college football? Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. Notre Dame's real good. It's like if you look at tennis, we've had men's dynasties. Serena was the women's dynasty. It's the same 4 or 5 great international soccer teams. It doesn't matter if it's retail, it's tech, it's sports. You're always trying to avoid, unfair playing field. Same team. You look at Kansas City right now. They're not going anywhere for 10 years. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, good luck. If you get the right people, you put them together, there's just a finite number of people who are truly great at their job. Right now, the Chiefs have several. And what a weekend for the Lakers. I mean, they are stacked. My other thought from the weekend was, my wife uses this saying sometimes. She'll say, I'd rather adjust to your absence than be frustrated with your presence. She told me that line the other night. We were just talking about sometimes if you're in a company situation and somebody doesn't work, and she's like, you're better off adjusting to their absence than being driven crazy by their presence. And this is why Carson Palmer years ago for the Cincinnati Bengals said, I'm going to retire if you don't trade me. I'd rather adjust to life without football than be annoyed being a member of the Bengals. Trade me or I'm retiring with years left. And that was Carson Palmer's ultimatum. I'm just not going to do this. I'd rather adjust to a life without football than deal with this nonsense. And that's why I said with Joe Burrow, I said be very careful I never forget when he got drafted and they took a shot of his family. I'm like, he doesn't look that happy. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. It is not a coincidence. The Browns, the Lions, and the Bengals have been a train wreck for 20 years. It's not a coincidence. Not great owners that won't pay for elite front offices, they don't have them, so they don't find the elite coaches. The best people in the NFL want to work with the best people. Right? Like the best people want to work with the best people. And so you get these franchises that nobody's going to take. No really high-end football coach is going to take the Bengals job. Why would you? They don't pay. They won't pay for a top GM. If I'm a coach, you get a Zach Taylor. You're not getting a Sean McVay. Sean McVay had options. You get a Zach Taylor. It's not like people were lining up for Zach Taylor. And that's what you get with these, like the Lions. What elite coach is going to go, if Urban Meyer was on the market, you're going to tell me Cincinnati and Detroit get the first call, or the Jets? And so I always say this, in the NFL, be very careful about firing your coach and turning over, because it turns off people. Great coaches want stability. And if you're constantly firing coaches, I mean, nothing against Kevin Stefanski, but it's not like he's an A-plus candidate for a coach. He may work. Same with Zach Taylor, Matt Patricia. You kind of get what you get. So I watched him this weekend, and I like a lot of these young quarterbacks. Tua's look good. Herbert's look good. Josh Allen's look good. Kyler Murray's look great. Joe Burrow looks good. But the one I worry about is Joe Burrow. That's what I worry about. Cincinnati has no history of supporting a great young quarterback. Prove it to me. Carson Palmer was the last great one you had, and he wanted out. By the way, Joe Burrow, latest from Adam Schefter. The MRI to Joe Burrow revealed more damage than anticipated. He tore his ACL, he tore his MCL, and suffered other structural issues in his knee as well. You go to a better team, you get a better coach, you get a better O-line. There's just 4 or 5 teams in the NFL. You get a B- coach, you get a C+ GM. Again, the best scouts in the league, they don't want to work for the Lions. They don't want to work for the Bengals. They don't want to work for the Jags. And so that's why I say in the NFL, who's your owner? Who's your owner? That'll dictate everything. You got a good owner, he'll get a good GM, and the GM will have, hey, look at my owner. We have stability. I mean, it's no shock that Andy Reid gets fired in Philadelphia. Where does Andy Reid go? Andy Reid had $20 million in the bank. Where does he go? He goes to Kansas City. The Hunt family's excellent. Brett Veach. Like, Kansas City has a history of not winning a bunch of Super Bowls, but being stable. Of being a stable franchise. So I look at Joe Burrow and the news is lousy this morning, and it's like, this is what we worried about. Bengal nonsense. This is what we worried about. I don't worry about Tua getting benched. I don't worry about Justin Herbert. Most of these young guys, I don't worry about Kyler Murray. Cincinnati, I told this story last week, years ago, a local high school football team, Mulder High School in Cincinnati, had an indoor facility. The Bengals didn't. Man, TJ Hushmanzada has come on this show before and said he got there, they shared jock straps. That's what they did. They shared jock straps. They didn't have Gatorade. You had to just find water fountains. I mean, that's the organization's history. So, I said, if I'm Joe Burrow, I would have pushed back. Eli Manning pushed back, Elway pushed back, and they were both rewarded. Sad. Tore ACL, MCL, brutal. I actually DM'd him last night, Joe Burrow. Made me sick to watch him. It just made me sick to my stomach. And again, it's not like second guessing. This is like first preaching. Everybody knew it was. We were all saying it. This is brutal. It's going to be Andrew Luck. Give him the playbook. Save us. Brutal. Just ridiculous. Trent Dilfer. Oh my God. Did he deliver a bombshell in the second hour? We'll revisit that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
In the summer and autumn of 2020, the city of Portland, Oregon became the center of a vast media blitz. Thousands of viral videos showing marching federal agents and police officers tear gas, black-clad anarchists in fires, went viral all over the internet. What didn't go viral was the truth, because the story of Portland's Black Lives Matter movement and of the Portland protests of 2020 is so much stranger than I think the mainstream media would ever be willing to cover. I was there, and more importantly, the people that I talked to for my new show, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, were there. Through their experiences, you'll learn the truth, both about Portland and about what's coming for the rest of the United States in the next few years. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Ever wondered why there are two ways to spell donuts? Or why some people think you can find water underground just by wandering around with a stick? Believe it or not, this is stuff you should know. You Know the podcast with over 1 billion listens. It's now for your eyes, so you can read it. Stuff You Should Know, an incomplete compendium of mostly interesting things, covers everything from the origin of the Murphy bed to why people get lost. Pre-order at StuffYouShouldKnow.com or wherever books are sold.
Rectech Grills with a Q.com, built by grillers for grillers, RECTEQ.com. Oh, man. Los Angeles County is shutting restaurants Wednesday at 10. Our heartfelt hopes and fingers crossed for all the restaurateurs in this amazing city. I don't know how you're going to do it. We'll be there to support you. I'll be buying takeout every night for the next 3 weeks minimum. Tony Gonzalez, the Hall of First, for only tight end ever in the history of football that was elected into the Hall of Fame on his first try. That's never happened before. That's interesting. Tony Gonzalez now joining us. By the way, when you were a kid, tight ends were not nearly as cool. Who was the best tight end in the NFL when you were at Cal or you were in high school?
Well, I think the guy that I looked to was Keith Jackson. Remember him?
Yeah.
Billy? Yeah, he was my guy that I looked up to. I used to watch all his games. And then when I got into the league, I started looking at Kellen Winslow Tate. Because he's a little bit before my time. I was born in 1976. He was in the early 80s. But yeah, Keith Jackson was my guy. He was the one who I really looked up to.
Why did you choose football over basketball? Because you were a good basketball player.
Well, I don't think I chose. It chose me. I wasn't good enough to be a basketball player. I was good, but I mean, I couldn't. Football, they were like, hey, you'll be a first-round draft choice. Basketball, I don't know, kids. Maybe you'll make a team. But you'll be floating around the league. So it kind of was just one of those things. I loved them. I loved basketball a little bit more. I like football a lot, but it was like, hey, for your future, if you really want to have a chance to do something great, you've got to go play football. So it was kind of like it's kind of an easy decision, actually.
So the Steelers have the defense, the Chiefs have the offense, but both are good on the other side of the ball. If the Steelers play the Chiefs today, who would you like and why?
Oh, God, that's the great matchup, right? That's what hopefully we see in the AFC Championship game as of right now. But I would say I'm gonna go with the Chiefs, and not because I played for them. I mean, right now the way Patrick Mahomes is playing, no matter what happens, it seems like they are always in a position. It's like when they got the ball last night, you just knew they were going to go down there and score. It was way too much time with that offense. He's in such command of it, and Andy Reid is in such command of calling plays right now. It's so much fun to watch, but I just that's what scares me about this Chiefs team right now. It seems like they're in the same position they've been in the last 2 years. And 2 years ago when he won MVP, Patrick Mahomes, they lost in the playoffs because they couldn't stop anybody in the AFC Championship game. And then last year the defense kind of started to figure it out and played well enough. And hopefully that's what happens now. But I really like Pittsburgh. That defense looks great, but I don't think anybody right now can stop the Kansas City Chiefs on offense. They're the best offense in the league.
Yeah. You were lucky. First of all, you played for Atlanta. They were smartly owned and smartly run. And though you didn't win championships in Kansas City, historically it's been a well-run organization. So I think you've done better than most in terms of your coaches, your quarterbacks, your owners, your GMs. But I look at Joe Burrow and I say to myself, I feel bad for that kid because, let's be honest, if you would have gone to Jacksonville, there are places, Tony, you could have gone and you would have been a decent player, but we would have never talked about you because you wouldn't have had like a Matt Ryan to get you the ball. Like, Did you ever have friends in the NFL that played for lousy organizations, and what was it like for them? Did you have friends like that?
I don't know about friends. I remember, I'm blanking on his name. He played at Hardy Nickerson. I'm sorry, yeah. Hardy Nickerson. So he's a great example of that guy who's just he's so underrated at the linebacker position. One of the best to ever play, but most people haven't heard of him because he played for an organization that wasn't good at the time. And that always kind of scared me a little bit. That maybe in Kansas City we were always good. We were never great, but we were always pretty good. So yeah. I was able to stay on the radar of a lot of people. But yeah, those type of players, I look at them all the time, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but when you rock the boat a little bit, when you say, hey, I'm tired of losing, we need to get out of here, that's when you get traded. If you play good guy and you keep your mouth shut, you keep your head down, and you try to say all the right things, the team's just going to keep you. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but this is what makes squeaky wheel gets the oil. So those type of players and those organizations, it's kind of like what happened with Eli Manning when he was like, I'm not going to go to San Diego. I'm going to go to the Giants, and I'm going to go win 2 Super Bowls. Is what happened. It was like the best decision ever. It's unpopular at the time, and people can frown upon it. But those type of organizations, it is what it is. You got to get out of there, or they better do something drastic to prove that they're going to go the right direction. Otherwise, I say you try to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, do you regret not being more outspoken early in your career because the Chiefs were having quarterback issues?
I don't know if I regret it, but I guess I kind of do. It is what it is. But I did finally figure it out because I asked for that trade in Kansas City towards the end of my career. And the only reason I did that because I really did only think I had 2 years left, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I'd rather retire than keep losing because because my window's closing. And I finally stood up and spoke out and said, hey, I want out of here. And of course, the backlash came. Where Kansas City, still to this day, there's people in Kansas City that don't understand that, and they don't like that. They don't like me because I asked to leave. But you have to do that. You have to think somewhat selfishly when it comes to your career, because next thing you know, you can be like, oh, well, damn, I spent my whole career and I never had a chance to go out there and do something great.
Yeah.
But so yeah, people get mad at players though for that. They get mad at T.O. or they get mad at these players that are outspoken. But in the end, those players they do get traded and they do end up on good teams. And it seems like it works out half the time for these players that are loud, so to speak.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez, the Hall of Famer. So I was watching one of the games I got right. Doesn't happen very often. I picked the Colts to beat the Packers, and the reason I picked it is because I thought the game would be ugly, and in the second half, just the Colts literally were a different team. They just 14-play drive, 10-play drive, 8-play drive. And it's funny, Tony, you got to take me here. You only have 15 minutes halftime, and you probably get about 7 to talk. How can the Colts spend all week in a game plan, not play well for a first half, talk for 7 minutes, and then totally change their identity? What the hell happens at halftime in 7 minutes? Take me to your career. Did you ever go in at halftime, getting your butt kicked, you'd make a little adjustment, and you're literally dominant for the next hour and a half?
Yeah, honestly, it's such a hard question to answer because it happens so many times. Because I don't know if it's the fire and brim speech because that happens periodically where the coach will come in and just tear your butt apart, the team apart, saying you're playing like crap, you're not being physical, you're missing your assignments, you're dropping, and then the team will go out there and turn it around. But I've also been chewed out at halftime. We go out there and we play even worse. But I do think that's where the really good coaching comes in. That's where Bill Belichick shines, Andy Reid shines. It seems like they're going to go into halftime and make that adjustment and be like, okay, this is where we keep consistently getting beaten. Let's address it. But there's also a spiritual shift, a soul shift at halftime that can happen too as well, and that comes from the players, the leadership, to go, hey guys, we're not playing like worth a damn right now. What the hell's going on? Let's go out there and turn it on this second half and get back in this game. And that's probably what happened with the Colts because that was 2 different teams from one half to the next.
Yeah. So players themselves, but they don't talk to ownership or GM. Do you think if you really sat down with Carson Wentz and said, dude, off the record, like a teammate, do you think he's probably wants out of Philadelphia? The papers are killing him. The talk shows are killing him. The Nick Foles statue. He lost Frank Reich, his coach. Like, I look at Carson Wentz right now, and he's lost. And I think he's talented. Sam Darnold's talented. That's not working. Do you think Carson Wentz deep down knows it's not going to work in Philadelphia? Or do you think he's still buying into everything, crossing his fingers, hoping it does?
Well, if he's buying into everything and just going blindly, hey, it's going to work out, it's going to be great, that's that attitude that I believe you can't have. You have to question the direction of your franchise. Okay, what are we doing, and what's realistic, and how much time do I have left? Can I be part of a rebuild? Do I want to be part of that rebuild, or do I just want that fresh start? You have to ask those type of questions constantly. Otherwise, you take the risk of just descending into mediocrity and to a career that you look back and go, damn, what the hell happened? I look back at my decision. I loved my time in Kansas City. I loved it. I loved the people. I did not want to leave. But at the same time, it was at that point, like, I don't know how much time I have left. I don't know if this I don't believe the franchise is going in the right direction with the hires that they just made. And it turned out I was right. I'd been around long enough at that point. I knew what would make a good team or a bad team, and I had that hunch, and I turned out to be right. And I'm glad I was able to get out of there. But I didn't take away from the love I had of Kansas City. And looking at Carson Wentz, he's got to ask himself those questions. He's got to be honest with himself and go, is this the best position for me and the team? I mean, I don't want to stay here and be mediocre, and I'm sure the team doesn't want me to stay here and be mediocre. Maybe they need a fresh start. I mean, it's not totally a selfish thought for him to ask that maybe I just need to get out of here. Maybe I need to get the hell out of here and get a fresh start, and they'll be better for it, and I'll be better for it. We both can win.
Yeah. It's funny. In New Orleans this weekend, there was a story that some of the players thought Jameis Winston should have started. And Sean Payton was like, no, I'm going to start Taysom Hill. And Taysom played very well, and he's very quirky. He's like a better version of Tebow. He's a better athlete. He throws better. But Tebow won 7 straight games until people saw enough film on him and saw, okay, this is what he can't do. It's like Kaepernick. Once you saw film on Kaepernick, you could figure him out a little bit. But the element of surprise, unique works. And Taysom's Kaepernick, Tebow, it's very unique. Nobody else played the position like that. Were you ever... It's funny that any player would second-guess Sean Payton, but players tend to think they know as much as coaches. Are you surprised he went with Taysom Hill? And did you ever doubt a coaching decision before a big game?
Yeah, of course. Of course you doubt that. You look at it, we've all been around. We've been playing this game a long time, and you have your opinion, and you say, okay, well, I've seen what this guy does in practice, and do you really think this is going to work? I'm with Sean Payton. For going, first of all, you paid him. I don't think he had any choice. You have to start Taysom Hill because you paid him way more money than you did Winston, and obviously you saw something in him. I didn't think he was going to play as well as he did. He played a lot better than my expectations, but you're right. I think now you got the tape on him. You know what he's comfortable with. You know what he likes. He better prove that he can throw that ball down the field to go along with those legs of his making those plays. But he's part of that new quarterback, that Kyler Murray, that Lamar Jackson, that running, like you said, Tim Tebow, except he can throw a little bit better. But I applaud Sean Payton because a lot of people were second guessing him, but he stuck to his guns, and obviously he showed he was right. But I can't wait to see what happens from here on out. Taysom Hill, the tape's out. Now let's see how you follow it up.
He threw the ball better than I thought. I'm watching some highlights here. He actually threw the ball better than I thought. He did. I'll give him credit.
Yeah, and they dropped some balls too.
Yeah,
I would say that. Like, you could tell that the balls that they did drop, those balls were coming in hot.
Yeah.
A little mustard on that because they're used to probably Drew Brees throwing that ball with all that touch. I mean, he's probably one of the greatest touch passers in the history of the NFL. And now you got this rocket cannon arm. A guy's going to have to make that adjustment. But he threw the ball really well. He was impressive, man. He did way better than I think anybody expected.
Yeah. The Hall of Famer, Tony Gonzalez, Fox Sports. Good talking to you, bud, on a Monday.
Yeah, take care, bud.
Yeah, Taysom Hill was better than I thought. He was. He's Tebow, but if you look at the physical, he's faster than Tebow. So Tebow was always like a 4.75 guy. Tebow was a good athlete, but he wasn't a great athlete. Michael Vick was a great athlete. So Taysom Hill's a great athlete. He's fast, and he throws a better ball than Tebow. So when people used to fall in love with Tebow, my takeaway was always like, well, what does he do great? He's not a burner. He's not. He's like a tight end that runs. He doesn't run as well as Travis Kelce. He wouldn't be a fast tight end. And that's not a knock on Tebow. He's a great college quarterback. But the NFL, you're asked to make harder throws downfield, and Taysom Hill made them yesterday. It's like, all right, it's better than I thought. Joey Tatum with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, sad news, Colin. Joe Burrow's incredible rookie season is over. He got an MRI today, which revealed more damage than was originally expected. He reportedly tore his ACL, MCL, and suffered other structural damage in his knee.
That's awful.
So his season is over. It is awful. I mean, obviously it's awful when anyone gets injured, but, you know, I love Joe Burrow coming in to the draft. Obviously had an incredible season last year with LSU, and he showed almost immediately that not only was he the future of this franchise and clearly a franchise quarterback, but he is one of those special players that he could actually elevate a team all on his own. Now, obviously, as this injury has shown, he needs pieces and help around him, as does everyone, but he has that extra special something that he doesn't need everything to be perfect. He's a playmaker, and he's a winner, and he won over the locker room and the franchise and fans right away. He's clearly a leader. It's just really sad. You never want to see a guy's season go down like this, and you know he's leading and rookie of the year, and it's just devastating. It's sad, and you know I don't know how this changes and turns around for him next year either. You know, he tweeted that you know he can't get rid of him that quickly, and you know thanks to Love he's going to be back next year. See you next year, but he was sacked 32 times and hit 77 times this season. Both are third most in the league behind Carson Wentz and Russell Wilson. Carson Wentz has had his share of injury situations, and Russell Wilson, like, we know what he's dealing with there. They're just kind of in a little bit different situations. But the Bengals are graded 26th in pass blocking and 12th in run blocking this season, according to Pro Football Focus. I just don't know how dramatically that changes next season. Like, if you're Joe Burrow, after you recover from this, which obviously he will, how are you looking at the franchise and what they're going to do moving forward?
Well, here's the good news. Drew Brees, John Stockton, Tom Brady, and Michael Jordan all had really bad injuries to their legs, or like 3 of them to their legs. Drew Brees to his shoulder. So we have a history of guys having really ugly injuries early, getting rehabbed and returning and being better than ever. So, you know, Jordan missed a year, broke a leg or a foot. And so this stuff happens. The difference is I just don't know if I trust the Bengals, and I have every reason to be cynical because I've watched football for the last 40 years.
Oh, yeah, that's totally what I mean. I mean, I think he's going to come back the same, if not better. I mean, guys have injuries. The NFL, you're going to have injuries. It may end up being a blessing that he had this type of injury earlier in his career as opposed to later. But to your point, what are the Bengals going to do to improve the situation for next year? We don't want to see another Andrew Luck type of career situation. They have to make some dramatic changes. Not only does he deserve that, but, I mean, the organization, the fans deserve that. Like, you went all in and got the guy. You have the quarterback now, so make the moves, be aggressive in the offseason to put pieces around him to protect him and make sure that he can be successful there. Otherwise, if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm going to start having conversations very early in my career about getting out of there.
Yep.
So the Cowboys finally snapped their 4-game losing streak with a 31-28 upset over the Vikings. Zeke Elliott led the way with his first 100 rushing yard game this season, and Andy Dalton threw for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns in his return. He was all fired up on the sidelines. The Cowboys are now tied with the Giants and Washington at 3-7 behind the first place Eagles. So the NFC East is the Eagles at 3-6-1, the Giants at 3-7, Cowboys at 3-7, and Washington at 3-7.
If you took an all-star team from that division, I would argue it couldn't beat the Chiefs. I'm serious. There's a couple of defensive linemen for the Washington. You could have a good defensive line, a great defensive line. That organization, Joy, is just 4 dysfunctional families. Now even the Giants coaches are fighting.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely put together a solid defense.
Yes,
I think with
Fletcher Cox.
With this,
yeah, Dexter Lawrence, Fletcher Cox, Chase Young, Ryan Kerrigan.
I mean, even some wide receivers as well. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the quarterbacks in this division, you're looking at the offensive lines in this division, the running games in this division, especially now. You know, the Giants are really Giants and the Cowboys. Zeke's not been running the same, and Saquon Barkley is out for the season. But if you look at the rest of their schedules, their remaining schedules. I mean, the Eagles have the worst. They have Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, Dallas, and Washington.
They're not going to go to
their
the
next
playoffs.
4 games are absolutely brutal. Giants is a bit lighter. Cincinnati, Seattle, Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Dallas.
I like that. You could go 5. I think they'll beat Cincinnati, Arizona at home, Cleveland. The way Baltimore's playing in Dallas, I think the Giants could win 1, 2, 3. They could go 4-2. They could become a 7-9 football team. Absolutely.
I think Washington might have the easiest remaining schedule, but I just don't trust anything that's going on in Washington because they have Dallas, then Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Seattle, Carolina, and Philly to finish out the season. I mean, this is not a great division, and it's going to be a one and done in the playoffs for whoever does win it, but it's going to come down to the last week likely for this division. So finally, we are here in Los Angeles, and the Lakers have been very busy in free agency and made some big moves this weekend. They signed reigning Sixth Man of the Year Montrezl Harrell to a 2-year deal. They brought in Wesley Matthews on a 1-year deal, and Marc Gasol has reportedly agreed to a 2-year deal as well. They also re-signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Obviously, they traded for Dennis Schroeder last week. They did lose Rajon Rondo and Dwight Howard in free agency and traded Danny Green and JaVale McGee, but have clearly re-upped their roster. And Markieff Morris tweeted today that he is also returning to the Lakers. He tweeted, "Run it back, #Lake Show." The rich get richer. I like the aggression. I like all of these moves, actually, and especially the Montrezl Harrell move is just my favorites. Obviously, are Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder, but a lot of good pieces that they added to a championship team.
Well, it's the deepest team I think LeBron's had in terms of, the 2 things we complained about last year with the Lakers is they felt old, so they got younger.
Yes.
And the second thing was, do they have a third scorer? Well, now, Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, you got a score off the bench and a third scorer. So they solved their, because they did feel creaky at times last year. They felt old. Rondo and Danny Green now, they're both gone. So now I've got Kuzma's pretty young, KCP's in his athletic prime, Montrezl Harrell is young. I would say Schroeder's in his athletic prime. So I got 4 really athletic guys with a lot fresh legs. I feel like this morning it is and LeBron doesn't love young players, Joy, but it's like it's a really nice mix of young athletic guys and smart veteran guys.
Well, he doesn't like young, inexperienced players that haven't figured out the league yet. These are young players, but they know how to be role players. They know how to contribute without, the egotistical problems. They know how to be coached. And one other thing that I like about the moves that they made is one thing that we liked about the Clippers, other than just their depth, was that their toughness and physicality. Well, you added Montrezl Harrell, you added Marc Gasol, and you have Wesley Matthews. Like these are great moves that add a lot of muscle to your team as well. So I love what the Lakers are doing.
Yeah, great weekend for them. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Live.
Sometimes in sports you'll see teams. Rams did this a couple years ago. They start adding pieces, and you're like, how do they afford all this stuff? It's Rob Pelinka managing the cap. Nice job. Tip of the cap. 3-word game on Best for Last to close out Monday.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
This is Sammy J, and I have some exciting news to share. We are back for Season 2 of my podcast, Let's Be Real with Sammy J. Season 1 had some amazing guests, including YouTube sensation Liza Koshy and NBA All-Star Kevin Love.
Nothing robs us of more human potential than mental illness.
This season will have more revealing and unfiltered conversations with celebrities, influencers, activists, and athletes, including the amazingly talented Anthony Ramos.
How do we dig deeper in what we say as artists if we aren't digging deeper in our own lives?
TikTok sensation Dixie D'Amelio.
This time last year, I was on the bus to field hockey games. I didn't even do TikTok.
And to give back, my guests will also talk about a charity that's close to their hearts.
Oh, Sammy doing all this important work in the world. I'm saying 17, man, come on.
Listen to Let's Be Real with Sammy J on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Kate Berlant. I'm Jacqueline Novak. We're comedians, best friends, and consumerist hogs hemorrhaging cash in the wellness world. That's why we made a podcast, Poog, a quixotic quest for wholeness. Here's a little snippet of us trying out a top dollar massage gun on our muscle manipulation episode. Press on once. Now press the up dot. Oh, damn, bitch. 2100. Now, I want you to notice. Whoa. Do you want to know the story of the guy who created this device? No. No? You're the rudest person. I'm so rude. I'm here with this free product. They say float it. Ow, ow, ow. And then go deep. Ow, the right inner thigh has pain. I repeat, the right inner thigh has pain. You float it in. You float it in. Whoa, the tension in the calves is reaching an all-time high. But we suffer from no ailments. We are looking to heal. For us, salvation lies in the next product, practice, or potion. This is our hobby. This is our hell. This is our naked desire for free products. This is Poog. That's P-O-O-G. Poog. On the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Casper.com, code HERD. Life-changing sleep. I sleep only on a Casper mattress. And well, I might add. It was another melatonin night. 3 milligrams, couple times a week. God, it's the best. Full of energy. All right, best for last. We call it the 3-word game. I believe you can succinctly describe every NFL game in 3 words when pressed, and here we go. Philadelphia, Cleveland, where's the sun? 3 straight games at First Energy Stadium with weather issues, but the Browns are 7-3 through 10 games. That's the best in 26 years. Nick Chubb has missed several games, but it's his 4th with 100-plus rushing yards, and when he runs, and runs well, and he did, big run in the second half, they win. Detroit, Carolina. Detroit, Mock City. First shutout in the Matthew Stafford era. He was sacked 5 times against a rebuilding franchise where most of their talent is on the offensive side. Bengals, Washington. Burrow deserves better. Most completions and pass attempts in the NFL. Not as a rookie, as a quarterback. 13 TDs, 5 picks, with a bottom 5 offensive line. Adam Schefter tweeted, tore his ACL, his MCL, worse than expected. Tennessee, Baltimore. Hail the King. King Derrick Henry, 133 rushing yards. He not only leads the NFL in rushing yards, he leads in yards attempt. There's no reason to hold off on him. Attempts and yards, he's the king of the NFL. Atlanta, New Orleans, 6-0. That's the Saints' record last 2 years. Teddy Bridgewater 5-0. Taysom Hill 1-0 when Breeze is out. The Saints have a 7-game winning streak. It's the longest active streak in the NFC. They just hammered Atlanta. They've hammered the Bucs twice. And Taysom Hill doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Helps the defense, and that's why they chose him. Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. Big versus Mac. Mike Tomlin said this isn't a Big Ten versus Mac game. Yeah, it is. Here's what's remarkable. In the storied history of the Steelers, I find this remarkable. This is the first time they've been 10-0. I can't believe that. I grew up with unbelievable Steeler teams in the mid-70s. For the record, Chase Claypool, rookie receiver, in the Super Bowl era, first receiver to score 10-plus touchdowns in his first 10 games. Patriots, Texans, all on Deshaun. First win for Houston against a non-Jaguar opponent. Watson. Are we going to show the run into the end zone? Good God, did he take a shot. 28 of 37, 122 passer rating. the ultimate life preserver. Is this it? Oh, what? That is just, oh my Lord. Deshaun Watson was on his game. Jets, Chargers. Haircut. Didn't hurt. Justin Herbert had 277 passing yards in the first half alone. A career-high 366 passing yards. He is the first rookie quarterback ever. This is something. With 2+ touchdown passes in each of his first 7 games. He is really special. Dolphins, Broncos, tough for Tua. Listen, 11 for 20, 83 passing yards, sacked 6 times. They went 3 and out 5 times in 8 drives. And I do believe with Tua, he doesn't have the arm of Herbert. He doesn't move around like a Burrow or a Josh Allen. There's a way for Tua to win in this league, and that is get great defense. He didn't get it as well, played from behind, high altitude, cold weather, probably the coldest game he's ever played in. Not good for Tua. Cowboys, Vikings, shock of day. First time the Cowboys have scored 20+ points in a game since Dak Prescott left. They pounded the football. 180 rushing yards, and I thought they were clever. Andy Dalton played well. CeeDee Lamb played well. I thought Dallas came in with a little bit of an offensive identity. We're going to run the football. And I thought in the red zone, some really clever play calling. So, I mean, the team has fight. They look prepared. Minnesota's defense isn't what it has been the previous 3 years, but nice performance. Packers, Colts, packed it in. Green Bay dominates the first half and scored just 3 points in the second half and overtime. That was a key 4th down that Aaron Rodgers missed on. Little more hurried in the second half. Colts had a 14-play drive, a 10-play drive, and an 8-play drive, and I won't blame Aaron for this. He just sat on the bench and watched most of the second half. At some point, quarterbacking is about rhythm and timing. There's no way in the world. And by the way, after that 14-play drive, he was 3 and out. After the 10-play drive, he was 3 and out. They just never saw the ball in the third quarter. And by the time the fourth came around, they'd lost all momentum. Finally, Kansas City and Las Vegas. Too much time. The Chiefs got the ball back, trailed by a field goal with $1:43 left in the fourth. Mahomes drove 75 yards on 7 plays. Mahomes accounted for all 75 yards. That's what he does in one of the most entertaining and well-played quarterback games of the entire NFL season. A 3-word game. Tonight, Buccaneers, I'll take them by a touchdown at home over the LA Rams, missing Pro Bowl left tackle Andrew Whitworth. RecTech is more than a grill, it's a lifestyle. Smart grill technology. Turn your grill on and off via your phone. You can get your cook on from your phone. RecTeq.com. We'll be back in the radio studio tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. For Joy and John, too. In LA, it's The Herd.
I'm Debbie Brown, the host of the Dropping Gems podcast, a podcast about the depth and potential of personal growth. No one's journey is the same as the next, but the magic of being human shows up in the things we have in common. Our capacity for love, pain, joy, sadness, togetherness, and solitude are things that make us perfectly imperfect, and I want to explore with you how we can live our best through it all. The new season of Dropping Gems is available now. Listen to Dropping Gems on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You've probably heard a lot about Portland on the news, about the tear gas and the federal agents with snatch vans and the anarchy. What you probably haven't heard is the truth, because the reality of what happened in Portland is so much stranger, so much more incredible than what the mainstream media was willing to show. I'm Robert Evans, and along with all of the other voices on my podcast, Uprising, A Guide from Portland, I was there. Listen to Uprising, A Guide from Portland on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you